Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter, and you know that it is Tatsuro Taira fight week over here on the show, and we're fired up about that. It's UFC Vegas 108. It's going down from the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you know that on Bets and Banter, we cannot rest. And guys, for the very first time, I believe, on Bets and Banter, it is none other than Cody MMA podcast before. But my brother, it's a pleasure.
Hey, man. Happy to be here. Like you said, we were talking right before we started the show. Pretty sure this is the first time coming over here. Obviously, you've come on Wager Wars a couple times, so I'm trying to remember if it's just that, but I think it is. So, yeah, appreciate you having me, man. Big fan of your content and the chat over here. Always a super sharp chat in your live chat. If I can't catch it live, when I watch it back, I always switch over to the chat so I can see all that. So definitely a lot of sharp guys in there. So appreciate y'all coming through and watching this. It's not the greatest card ever, but it's a solid card. There's some fun fights, and it's another opportunity to make some money. So I'm always down with that. I know you're always down with that. So clearly, if you're tuning in on UFC Vegas 108, there's a good chance you're part of either the hardest of hardcores or you're also trying to make some money. So hopefully we can do all that. And there'll be some fun fights along the way. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was going to say, man, when I'm looking at this fight card, first of all, I realize I got a dress shirt hanging on the back of the chair. Unprofessional as fuck. Here we go. But guys, when you're looking at this kind of fight card, what it does not have is star power. I do these social media A-side reports on a week-to-week basis, which you could take them or leave them, right? But it's just a data point for me. I like to see how many followers do these people have. And you see week-to-week, pay-per-view to pay-per-view, it's a little bit different, right? This fight card, guys, international fighters, yeah, plenty of them. People that are fun action fighters, yeah. Some meaningful fights that have some stakes for divisions, sure. Just not star power, right? There's like very few fighters on this bill that have a lot of following. First of all, we have a replacement in the main event, supposed to be Amir Albazi, a former main event fighter, a guy who's got a little bit more name recognition. Now in steps Hyun Park, 3 fights deep in a UFC career. Tatsuro Taira, talk of the hardcore community, right? We all like this guy. We've seen him coming up. We've watched all those early fights, but he was on the prelims for a time. He was working his way up. Then he gets a main event opportunity. Didn't quite go his way, but he did gain some new fans along the way in that fight. Now we get to see how it all shakes out for these fighters. And I think we're still in for some good action. I think maybe a little bit more decisions on the prelims and then work our way up to some violence, but we'll have to see, my man. We'll break it down fight by fight. As you guys know, starting with the first fight of the night. And our guy Cody did make a great point off the rip as well. We got the sharpest chat in the game. So thank you to everybody who's already here rocking with us. God bless. Good luck this event. And let's start with the first one like we always do. We got Vieira Rodriguez taking on Souza in the opening fight of the night. And I would be remiss if I did not hand it off to my guest. Brother, please start us off. How do you feel about this first fight of the night? Do you feel like there's any betting value to be had? What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic, opening fight of a card. I mean, it's a lower level women's MMA fight. It should be honestly a pretty solid scrap. Like I was kind of taking a look at Fight In Sub. It was plus 500 earlier today. That would be like my favorite angle to bet this probably. If not just taking a dog shot. Just it's an opening, like I said, classic opener fight card for women's MMA. Like, do you really want to bank on Rodriguez going in there and fighting to a smart game plan? And honestly, they sized up pretty well at the weigh-ins. Souza's gonna fight for your money. We've seen her. I cashed her as a big underdog against Waregi. Is that how I thought the fight was gonna go? Of course not. But it was the prime example of just women's MMA big underdog. But, we obviously saw she's capable of that club and sub type of situation. Has some power, pretty decently well-rounded. So it would have to be like on the other side, we got a girl who could be dominating the fight and just absolutely hand it over. I mean, that was one of the instances where it was like, I'm never one to call fix, but it was like, man, did you throw that fight? Because you just went from like dominating. And the weird thing wasn't the foul. It was the fact that she fouled, looked right at the ref as he said something about the foul, and then fouled again. I was like, what did you not just try to get DQ'd? Maybe it was a language barrier. I don't know. But it was just weird to watch. I was glad I did not have money on her because I would have lost my shit. But yeah, I think Pierre should be the favorite, but can't trust her. Be dog or pass, or maybe fight in sub if I bet anything. But just a pass for me right now. There's underdogs I like better.
Yeah, fair play, my man. When I looked at this fight, my initial gut reaction, Kelvin Souza does check some boxes for me. When I talk about some angles that I look at long term, right? You look at individual matchups. I think that's so important in MMA. But also, just when you want to give yourself like a theoretical framework to start with, it's like, what are some key indicators that might be something to look into, right? And when I'm looking at this fight, I see 29 versus 32, younger fighter. They have a very similar size, not a big difference there. Then you see the amount of professional experience for Ketlin Souza. There's definitely some things that you could talk yourself into on that side. But when I ran the tape back and I also just like considered, okay, who are you beating? What exactly does it tell me? It's like beating Yasmin Waregi, as sad as it is to say at this point, like it just doesn't mean as much as it once did, because she's been flattened a couple times now. She's had a sketchy chin in the UFC, period, point blank, right? Like, I don't know if she's cutting too much weight or just doesn't have a great chin or like what the problem is, but it's been recurring theme after recurring theme for her. So big problem. Then you look at Ketlin Souza, the Carini Silva fight, virtually uncompetitive, right? Just like gets taken down, gets Z-locked, probably it could have been a serious injury there as well. It was like a really nasty looking finishing mechanics there. And I think she had to be like carried out or something, if my memory serves. I could be misremembering there. So don't crucify me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I just remember Ketlin Souza being like grounded for a while, looking really uncomfortable. Carini Silva came over to like comfort her afterwards because she was banged up in the leg, right? So that's not the kind of thing you want to have happen as a young fighter. And then you also look at her background, like in the UFC, she's done okay, right? She's been holding her own. She's been fighting well. The Angela Hill fight, not getting finished out there, giving a decent account of yourself. Maybe it could have went either way type of deal. But I just look at, like, you've been finished a bunch of times. Kind of rare for WMMA, right? Piera Rodriguez, like, very plausibly could be 4-1 in the UFC. And you look at the one loss she suffered, that it's, like, clean as a whistle, right? Like, not her doing something stupid. To your point, you don't want to really trust somebody at minus 220 that could do something stupid, ideally. But just, like, looking at the stylistics here, I feel like Ketlin Souza kind of there to be taken down. I think multiple opponents have taken her down in the UFC. And then you look at like pre-UFC, kind of got bully balled a little bit. You talk about Piera Rodriguez threw away that fight against Ariane Carnelossi. By the way, I had Carnelossi that night, got bailed out. Thanks so much. But when you look back, it's like, I just look at, the common opponent, right? They both fought this girl. Ariane Carnelossi finished Ketlin Souza, and it kind of wasn't that competitive, so it's just like, again, time changes everything, right? Ketlin Souza, the one tip of the cap you have to give to her, she's gotten better over the course of her career, and she's gotten better, I think, since she got to the UFC. But with all that being said, has she gotten better enough that she's like on Piera's level? And for me, like the Josephine Knudsen win, that's a clean win. That's a solid win. They expected Knudsen to win, and they fired her when she lost. They were like, I can't believe you. But when you just look at that fight, like, she takes her down over and over and over again, just rinses her in the grappling. And Piera Rodriguez has attempted a ton of takedowns outside of the Jillian Robertson fight, where she got out wrestled, out grappled by one of the best finishers in WMMA, period. So, like, you just go look at, like, the history books in the UFC. Fucking Amanda Nunes, Jillian Robertson. That's the best finishers in WMMA history as far as the UFC is concerned. And you just look at, like, yeah, Piera lost that fight. Would Ketlin Souza win that fight? Would she not get finished in that fight? Like, I think both those things would happen to her. Like, she would lose and she'd get finished. So I just look at Piera and I say, is she worth the price? Probably not. Do I think she wins the fight? I do. I think she's going to win it either in round 2 or 3 or via decision. Like, I think she's going to be downhill on this girl. I think at 32 years of age, having some experience now in the octagon, maybe the realization in that Knudsen fight, go out there, wrestle, punch, don't make any big mistakes, keep it simple. I think she could break this Ketlin Souza girl, who I have seen break before regionally, if she pursues that path. And also, I think she could just do it for 15 minutes if she doesn't make a catastrophic error, mentally. So for me, again, minus 220. Could you get caught speeding? I think it's possible. I do think, though, Piera Rodriguez, for me, has the tools to win this fight, and I'm going to be picking her to get the job done. My prediction over at Roto Grinders, round 2, 3, or decision for Piera Rodriguez. But WMMA, first fight of the night. Expect wild outcomes. Anything to add before we move to the next one, Cody?
Nah, I think you summed it up pretty well. And I mean, we pretty much agree. It's just a matter of, for me, if I was going to bet it, it'd be, I still think Pierre should be the favorite. It's just, I'd have to take an underdog because I'm definitely not betting Rodriguez 2-1. But, in sub could be a sneaky way because I could see either snatching up a sub. But yeah, just probably going to be a pass for me, man. I got to pick my spots on these Apex cards. And, that's one thing that I like to make sure I do. And, take plus money even more on these Apex cards. And don't trust, opening fighter. This person's I was talking about it a little bit on Wager Wars. I was like, man, these days, I remember used to get Khabib minus 300. Now you're getting guys that are
random Dana White Contender Series guy minus 1750,
or worse, or 0-1, but looked really good, and is
unreal.
minus 650 and stuff. It's a different game, and that's why people will be like, "Oh, you're a dog hunter." It's like, dude, the crazy thing was I used to be a parlay guy, but I had to adjust because nowadays, man, it's tough to parlay. Unless you want to make 4-leggers and stuff. And I don't think that that's sustainable long term. So, I mean, if you're that guy who can be consistently profitable hitting 4-leg parlays, hey, man, I can't though. So I've turned into more of a single play money line plus money, pick a couple underdogs I like. But so there's some I like better than Souza. Is what I'm getting around to. We can move on to a better fight, man. Even though this next one, I don't know if it's going to be too much better. Should be fun while it lasts.
I'm just going to quickly hit the chat. Londo says Piera KO, which I do think is possible. Dixon asked if I think Souza's a quitter, which, I think that would be a little bit harsh, but I do think that she can break, right? And I think if you've ever done athletics before, especially combat athletics, you know what breaking is, right? Sometimes we get tired. Sometimes we start feeling sorry for ourselves. We're getting beat up a little bit. Things aren't going our way. And, you just decide in that moment, I've had enough. I don't want to keep doing this right now. And I've seen her do that before. So, again, you want to call that quitting? I think it's a little bit pejorative, right? Especially the connotation. And, I think she went out there and fought hard for 15 against Angela Hill, right? So she's not a quitter, but she's just a girl that I think, if you apply the right amount of pressure, if you hit her hard enough, if you put some real doubt in her mind, we have seen that she can capitulate. So I think that you're within your rights to take the shot on a women's MMA armbar at 20-1, just on principle in general. Also, she showed a club and sub in the UFC, right? So if she hurts somebody, she will try and follow up with that grappling. We know that, but I don't think she's a grappling ace either. So with that being said, now we can move along to the next fight on the card. Talk about a grappling ace. Felipe Bunes, that is his best skill set. He comes out very aggressive in the grappling. He was able to submit Jose Johnson, get his name on the right side of the win-loss ledger in the UFC. He had previously lost to Joshua Van, and you guys know Joshua Van now is considered wow, what a fighter. At the time, he was just a guy working his way up the division, very young kid. And I had my question marks about how Van was going to deal with Bunes at the time, because I thought to myself, Van, blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, coming along, right? Definitely a talented kid, making improvements every fight. But I just did not know if he was going to have the grappling to stand up to this guy. And Bunes came out and had some success early, but I also saw, he really slowed down badly at the 5-6 minute mark. And you kind of look through the pattern of his career. If I had to make a criticism of Bunes, a lot of decisions he's struggling. Fights that go long. He's getting finished in the second and the third round type of deal. And he's an explosive first-round submission artist. So I think that he's a front-loaded guy. I think that Bunes, even on the feet, he was having some success against Joshua Van, landing some combinations, getting some respect. but he just does not have the gas, in my opinion, to sustain it. The irony here is that Rafael Estevam is a known gasser. You look at this guy, he gasses out in all of his fights, basically, that go into the third round, but he's very good at banking those first 2 rounds. He's very good at wrestling, very good at getting the top position. And I feel like stylistically, this is the kind of fight that, Estevam cheated, right? He missed weight. He's a consistent weight misser, a consistent gasser. There's like 10 things not to like about the guy, and he's a massive favorite. So for all those reasons, like, I would never tell you to bet on him to win the fight, but I also just think like the archetype of this matchup is like a guy who's very good at getting to takedowns, getting and staying on top, controlling position. He's had 9 minutes of control in both of his first 2 UFC fights against a guy who, in my opinion, can fight for 5-6 minutes and then he's completely exhausted. So I'm just like, for Estevam's faults in the cardio, like, I think he's the superior cardio athlete among these two, and he didn't have to cut as hard, right? Like, he missed weight. So the 35-year-old who actually made the weight and like did his job professionally is a little bit smaller than the guy who is going to come in here and like probably have missed weight and feel a little bit more comfortable. And then he's also a very good wrestler and grappler who's going to try and get the top position frequently. So it just seems to me like Bunes, unless he's able to get a submission in the first 2 rounds, is probably not going to win this fight. But again, when you have somebody like Estevam who gasses out, like, do you want to put a lot of trust in this guy when he's not professional, missing the weight? Do you want to put a lot of trust? Not really, but I'll just also point to the fact, like, he went out there and got like 10 takedowns, I think it was, against Jesus Aguilar, put up a massive score on DraftKings. Charles Johnson is a guy who's been very difficult to get one over on in the UFC. The only guy to beat Josh Van, knock him the fuck out, by the way. And Rafael Estevam took him down, did his job, did it in his UFC debut. So you look at the guy's skills and like 13-0, you don't do that by accident, right? That's a real clear skill set. He's fought decent enough competition, especially in the UFC. So for me, as much as I hate cheaters, as much as I hate weight missers, like, archetypal fight, like guy who goes to guard and gasses in 6 minutes and throws up wild submissions is normally not going to win against guys that get top position, fight with better process, and have 3 or 4 minutes more cardio to work with. So for me, Estevam's the pick, but reluctantly, not going to justify his price. Negative EV decision loading, but I think that he could also finish here because Bunes is that bad a gasser in my view. What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, man. It sucks the weight miss because this was one I probably was going to bet. I was like 90% going to bet. I was just watching the line get better, and I was going to take a dog shot, honestly. But I really don't. You don't want to fade cheaters in MMA, man. And don't get me wrong. It's not like I don't think, Estevam's pretty solid. He's got a style that, wins fights, and that's why he's undefeated. But and that's, it pairs so nicely with the size advantage too, and he's already big. So, what's the one like hope if you're gonna fight that style, if they're gonna come in with size and wrestling and try to wrestle you, you want to hope they gas out. Oh, this guy, like you said, doesn't even have to suffer. I know firsthand those last 3 pounds are I'd rather do the 10 before that than the last 3. So the first 10, 15 pounds, you're just in the sauna hanging out. It's a good time. It's the end that sucks. So, yeah, I mean, it's a problem. It's blatant cheating. If you miss weight by more than a couple pounds, like 2.5, and you didn't alert your opponent, alert the UFC, there's only one explanation. It's you knew 100% and you cheated. So, yeah, I mean, it gets rewarded, so it's tough to really even be mad at. Why not get a couple in? You get to do it a certain amount of times before you're gonna even get noticed. There's just too many fighters on the roster for them to even really care. But anyways, Estevam should be the favorite, but I was going to take a dog shot, but now it's statistically proven that, it's not necessarily like people will try to say, oh, just recently people have missed weight and they've still lost. But these egregious weight misses, man, especially with this kind of style, it's just going to lean in unless he truly has some sort of injury. And it just doesn't seem to be something like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll probably just pass, but I am watching this line because if it gets outrageous, then I'll take a shot because he is pretty dangerous. Maybe he could knock him out or catch him, with a submission. But yeah, I mean, Estevam, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I was going to pick Bunes outright if it wasn't for the weight miss. No, he should be the underdog. But, I'm just less inclined to take that underdog shot now. So might just be a pass for me at this point.
Yeah, one thing I did want to note here, guys. Felipe Bunes was the one originally scheduled for this event. Supposed to take on Andre Lima. In my humble opinion, the UFC was sending him to get killed. No disrespect. I just feel like that's like Andre Lima has very good cardio. He's not easy to out grapple. That was going to be a disaster of a fight for him. But when you look at, where it ended up shaking out, he's now taking on Estevam on short notice. And Estevam does present a much different style. Lima is very comfortable to work on the feet, right? He's got a submission game. He's got an excellent black belt, but he's also a guy that's very comfortable working on the feet, throwing his low kicks, moving in and out of boxing range. So, now he's got a completely different stylistic opponent here in Estevam, but Estevam is a guy that we've talked about, doesn't always come in with the best cardio. He accepted this fight on short notice. He missed weight for this fight as well. So when you talk about compounding factors that could just add to the variance here, we talk about knowns and unknowns. Unknowns should push the line a little bit closer to 50-50. I think the knowns on this fight are the reason why Estevam's a big favorite, right? More likely to get top position, shown better cardio in the past, but the unknowns here make it a dog or pass situation for me. And the other thing is, like, let's say they have a super competitive first round. Let's say Bunes wins the first round, so it cracks him on the chin or something, right? I think that you could live into Estevam then at an actual reasonable price and bank on the fact that he's got better cardio, if that's like your capping of the fight, just because pre-fight minus 625 when the guy is probably going to be in a very competitive round one. That for me is something to note, right? Like, do I think Estevam wins round one? Yes. Do I think he's a minus 625 to win round one? Fuck no. So for me, like, all those reasons make it dog or pass, just in theory for me. Yeah. All right, man. Next up, this fight should honestly be interesting, right? Austin Bashi looking for redemption, bro. He lost that first fight in the UFC. They gave him the prospect killer, C-Rod. Prospect got killed. What you going to do? Then you look at John Yannis, another guy, gets the short notice ring-a-ding-ding. Hey, man, can you make weight? I'll do it. He used to fight at 135. I'm sure 145. Very comfortable for this guy coming in. 31 years of age. Maybe wants to use that man strength. Cody, we'll kick it over to you first, brother. How do you feel about this matchup? Short notice going down. Do you think Austin Bashi gets on track in the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that's what's supposed to happen. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I bet against what the UFC wants all the time, and it works out. It's not like that's something I'd love to do, but when the line dictates, I'm willing to do it all the time.
See Buchecha versus Budai in hindsight, right? They literally fired Budai on a win. Like,
yeah, I mean, and Liao, it seems like the UFC were like, hey, here's a 50-year-old guy. We know you got robbed last time you were here. If you come back, we'll give you a 50-year-old. Well, I bet Salikov and I bet Budai. So, I went against what the UFC wanted there. But I don't know if I'll get around to it here. I will say I went and watched Yannis a couple of his fights, like, because, it just got booked, 2 days ago? So, I've only seen like 3-4 of his fights. So I'm going to watch a little bit more, but I watched his last 3 fights, maybe his last, I think one of them was like a minute long. So 4 fights, but, yeah, definitely a striker. I think Bashi should have a decent grappling advantage. I thought Bashi would be like a minus 500, something like that at open. I think it opened like, 250, but you put like $5 on that, whatever. It immediately went to 550. So, now it's like minus 950. I was telling everybody, I'm just going to pass. Bashi should take this guy down and submit him. But now it's getting to the territory where I'm like, I mean, hey, I know this dude's coming to fight. He's got some power. He's got some striking. Like, Bashi's a little undersized for the division. Like, I'm getting the bigger guy. I know it's the biggest fight of his life. He's coming to scrap. And it's like 6 plus 650. It's getting enticing. I wanted to just pass, but, it's getting to the point where I'm like, maybe Bashi comes out like, oh, I'm coming off a loss. You would think he's going to grapple. But if he comes in here like, I'm going to strike, I'm not saying he can't strike in parts, but if he doesn't mix in the wrestling, or if he can't get on top pretty early on, this could definitely get dicey. And you are not going to be wanting to hold that minus 950 when, they're just going blow for blow on the feet. So, yeah, I mean, I think Bashi you would think he's going to go in here and get a friggin' takedown and submit him, right? But, I mean, we're going to talk about Nakamura here soon, who went in there and everybody had him parlayed up, whatever the hell he was. And then he was like, yeah, I'm going to shoot one takedown against a guy who pretty much just has power on the feet. But, so maybe he does that. But, you can't really knock him too much for losing to C-Rod, man. I don't know what they were thinking giving him to C-Rod there. Like, just, oh, nice.
When I tell you guys, C-Rod is impossible to control. Just watch this and see it for yourself. Like,
yeah. The prospect killer, I don't know what they were doing giving him to C-Rod, man. That was a problem. But, yeah, I'll kick it over to you though, man. He should get back on track, but the line's just getting this straight up banana peel pricing, man.
I agree with you that like this is a big price, and like I don't think John Yannis is a bad fighter. I don't think he's a punk. Like I think he's a good fighter. I think he's going to win fights in the UFC. Tweeted that out earlier this week, but unfortunately, I did also tweet. I just don't think it's starting on Saturday. I will say. Yeah, shout out to Tristan in the chat. Shout out to the sharpest chat in the game. He was plus 225 on C-Rod there. I can't remember if it was 35 or 45. I was there with you. I did fade Austin Bashi in his debut after calling him one of the best prospects on Contender Series. Guys, when you're under 25 years of age, you're not even done physically developing, right? This guy is not even a fully grown man yet, and he is out there competing with grown men. He's got 13 wins under his belt as a professional, fought some quality guys as well. When you look at John Yannis, I want to highlight his record just because the guy has been out there doing work, right? Fought Nick Aguirre. That's a former UFC fighter, guys. Nick Aguirre, let's be very clear, took the back of Peyton Talbot, was winning the first round, came back and cashed my sub prop and my late round props there like a fucking soldier, did Peyton Talbot. But Peyton Talbot was in some bad situations with Nick Aguirre early. When you look at Nick Aguirre in the fight against John Yannis, he got his back, I think, round 1, round 2, I think in round 3, he started to slow down a little bit, maybe didn't quite get there. And then in round 4, he ended up getting finished on the feet. He got beat up there. He started to take some damage. And you look at Yannis, that's what he does really well is, I would say on the ground, he's at best a defensive player. He's not a guy that I rate as like a offensive grappler, a wrestler. I think his first layer wrestling defense is okay. I just think that when you start to get this guy to the ground, he basically goes into, I'm going to lose this round and try my best to defend and survive mode. And if you go back and look, right, he fought Nick Aguirre, he fought CJ Jimenez, he fought Dimas Chapa. When you look before that, Gabriel Vanderlei, guys, he got wrecked in the grappling in that fight. And you saw Vanderlei is a good fighter, right? But I think that Vanderlei, with all due respect, is like a touch slow. Like he's kind of big and long and awkward and very technical, but like he's just not moving that fast. And brother, I feel like when you watch a guy like Bashi, he's fast, man. He got 3 takedowns on C-Rod. He banged some control time there too. But C-Rod is impossible to sustain grappling success against. Like show me one guy, like you can catch him in a choke or something, maybe. But show me one guy who just sustains long-term grappling success against C-Rod. I watched his fights all the way back to the amateur days. It's few and far between. So hard to out-grapple that guy. And when you do, you're gassed as a result. Like he gasses you trying to do it. So I just think that that's a uniquely difficult matchup to come in. And I feel like the UFC was trying to find out, like, should we pushing this guy like title fights and like, get him on to main cards and stuff, or should we be bringing him along slowly? And they got their answer, right? They did the exact same thing, by the way, guys, with Raul Rodriguez. Am I saying the right name? The guy goes out there and he's like, not able to dominate C-Rod physically. And they're like, yeah, let's pump the brakes. Let's bring him back a step in competition. Let's build him up the right way. They're kind of seeing where you're at. You're a young guy. And I feel like that's what they did with this guy, put him out there, see if the prospect killer can get him. If he can get over on him, we push him right up the card. If he can't, then we temper the brakes. Raul Rosas, if I misspoke, I apologize. I am definitely having a sip of the old alcoholic beverage tonight as opposed to the coffee. So any details that I get wrong, attribute to the alcoholic beverage and me bouncing around my head at jiu-jitsu. But all of this to say, I did watch the Aguirre fight. I did watch the Gabriel Vanderlei fight, and I saw so many bad grappling positions, grappling decisions in those fights that I just think Austin Bashi, this is a get right spot for him. I think he should be able to wrestle and grapple successfully in this fight. The one thing about Bashi that stands out about his game is his back-taking ability. And I think that he will have the ability to take the back of Yannis in this fight. So if he does not get the submission, I think he will probably ride out a decision with many minutes of control from the backpack. So ultimately, that's the way I see this fight going. I think that Yannis will, again, win UFC fights. Like, no question in my mind. I just think stylistically, like, not many guys are going to be able to press him in the wrestling and grappling like this. And Bashi was in a uniquely bad spot trying to do it to a crazy defensive guy. And now it's like, I feel like Yannis, unfortunately, is going to be rendered defensive early in this fight and kind of go into survival mode jiu-jitsu. And maybe that'll keep him alive for the rounds, but like, it just doesn't feel to me like that's a way to win the fight. Do you feel what I'm saying, Cody?
Yeah, no, I mean, Bashi should. I think the UFC is good. This is a get right spot. And I mean, they wanted to keep him on the card. And we haven't even really, talked a whole lot about that. But it's not to mention all of the stylistic clash that and all that kind of stuff that works against him that we've both touched on. And then he's now fighting him on less than a week's notice. So, definitely should be a pretty sizable underdog. I'm just taking a look at the line because it's getting to the point where, it's a little dangerous. And sometimes you just got to plug your nose and say crazier things have happened. And when I've done that in the past, it's worked out enough to still be profitable. So, you got to just keep an eye on the line. But, I think Bashi should win. It's just, if they fight 100 times, does he win 95 of them? I don't know about that.
I gotta say, one thing I've always respected about your capping, I always preach on this show that, like, to bet underdogs in this sport, sometimes you have to be willing to look like a fool. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you bet an underdog, they're like plus 600 or something, and they'll go out and have 3 minutes of success, and then they get taken down or like shit goes sideways, right? But you're like, that's why I bet it, right? Do you see where my thought process was? And it's like, yeah. I believe in that, right? I bet mostly big underdogs in terms of like my highest ROI plays, and so. C-Rod, I was like, how wrong could you be at plus 235, with a guy like this, with a guy who's proven this much? The thing about John Yannis that you can't take away from him, Nick Aguirre was a UFC fighter, right? Mo Miller fought on the Contender Series. Cam Smotherman made it to the UFC. He lost a split decision to that guy. So is this guy UFC level? Like, yeah, I think he basically is, right? So dog or pass situation on the money line, but stylistically, I think Bashi gets it done. And in terms of how I'd be looking at this, I'd probably be looking at Bashi submission props. That'd be the way I'd be trying to isolate this. But if the decision number was big enough, I'd consider that. I will just note, though, guys, Yannis KO, I think, is like the vast majority of his win equity here. I think he will lose minutes. I think he'll be in bad positions, but the guy throws very hard, committed combinations, believes in his offense. I love his coaching staff as well. They corner this guy, and they know exactly what buttons to push. They tell him he's breaking. He doesn't want to be there. Go after him now. They understand dynamics of fighting in terms of the psychology. And like, bro, like they basically read that Nick Aguirre didn't want to be there, and they fucking pressed him to get after him right then and there. And he was able to get him out of there. So I do think that Yannis is a guy that you have to respect, right? He's going to come in and fight hard. I just think skill for skill, the grappling's not there yet. So that for me is his work in progress here at 31 years of age. Bashi, 14 fights deep in a pro career. I think that the guy knows where his bread is buttered, 10 takedowns and a submission over Dorian Ramos on the Contender Series. I feel like that's a quality win, and I feel like he could replicate that game plan here. Next up, we've got a very interesting fight. I would say this is the talk of the Twitter streets, my friend. We got Nick Klein taking on Andre Pulyaev, blue collar against the Ruski, and it's going down, my man, in the middleweight division. We've got the 29-year-old Klein. He stands 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. He's taking on the massive Pulyaev, who's 6'4" with a 78.5-inch reach. Pulyaev, one of these awkward kicking guys, likes to stand on the outside, throw big, heavy kicks. First fight against CLD, just an utter disgrace, right? A non-entity of a performance. God bless him for it. Wish him the best. Contender Series was obviously where he got a little bit of hype and acclaim on his name, got the win over Liam Anderson as an underdog. did so with some pretty impressive kicking offense. Liam Anderson was tougher than an old leather boot. A lot of guys would have went down to those shots. His nose was rearranged. His face was all bloody. And he just kept coming forward and saying, more, please. But a lot of guys would have taken, maybe 4 or 5 of those body kicks and said, it's not my night, and probably taken a knee there. So respect, but for me, Pulyaev definitely has some sketchy tape. On the Nick Klein side, he's an awkward fighter, man. Like that Abdul Malik fight tells you a lot of what you need to know in terms of all chaos, all action. Not a lot of great decision making, but definitely willing to go out there and pursue the fight wherever it takes him. I think that on the ground, he's got a distinct advantage here. I think he's more aggressive, more assertive on the mat. I think he knows what he's doing more there. Pulyaev, in my opinion, has some really sketchy footage. I've seen him, on the regional scene as well as in, the contender series fight, right? Like Liam Anderson takes him down, seamlessly passes to the full mount. If there's a minute left in the round, he might have got finished in the second there, right? Instead, he ends up getting bailed out, goes back to the corner and gets another opportunity. But ultimately, I just think Pulyaev is a liability on the ground. I think that on the feet, Nick Klein is a liability. So I think this is going to be a car crash kind of fight. Maybe a pick your poison, whoever gets their game going. Pulyaev's not the most prolific finisher. Klein's a tough guy, but like you just can't take clean kicks, punches over and over. And I don't think Klein reacts very well to being hit. And on the other side, Pulyaev, again, just horrible reactions on the ground, bad decision-making, doesn't seem like he has a deep understanding in extended situations. So for me, I feel like this is a pretty violent fight, and I think it's Klein by sub or Pulyaev by knockout way more often than not. What do you think, brother?
Yeah, this is actually a funny, first of all, kind of a perfect example of my betting style since we were talking about it. And it's also kind of funny because I've bet, so both these guys have a contender series fight and a UFC fight. I've bet all 4 of them. All 4, I took the underdog and went 2-2. So made some money there. But, it's funny. Similar story. They were both big Klein was a pretty big underdog. Pulyaev was pretty.
He was a massive dog, dude. I think it was like plus 400 or something, if I'm not mistaken. I got to go back and check, though.
Yeah, I cashed him there. Now, I'll say, when he went to his back, I was screaming, no. And then, locked up a sub. It all worked out. But with the Pulyaev fight, Liam Anderson, I'm not super high on him. It was kind of just like, I think both these guys suck. And, you're going to give me a solid line like that. Nowhere near the Klein line. And then they were both big underdogs in the next fight. At least Klein had a moment. But, he was a huge underdog. What was he, like, plus 850 or something? I think
in that one, he was plus 750. Also, I went back and fact-checked myself. Totally wrong. He was plus 145. It was the sub that was plus 600 against Geraldo Souza. And he cashed it in like 30 seconds. So.
Okay. Yeah. The Pulyaev fight, I think the line was pretty close too. But anyway, they're both big underdogs in their debut. Obviously looked terrible, but at least the Pulyaev did. Klein had some moments, but I mean, Monster, there's a big gap between him and Pulyaev. I just feel like I know these guys pretty well. And yeah, like you said, if it stays on the feet, Klein's going to be getting, unless he were to land like a big shot like he did to Mansour, which that was kind of, I don't want to say the F word, but it was a little crazy. I don't know how often he's hitting that, but,
the kids call it a meme.
Yeah. I mean, other than a meme shot, he's not, and he really could meme. A guy like Pulyaev, he's a striker, but the defense is not great. The thing about his grappling is, it's horrendous. Like, I'm submitting this guy. Like, I'll submit him tomorrow. Like, grappling is awful. And Klein's a friggin' tank early on. So, sometimes he gasses out, but sometimes he will get like a second wind. You'll see like he'll look tired, and then all of a sudden he can push again in like the third round, or like late second. But I think he could. I think he could steamroll Pulyaev here, man. I think he could just get an early sub. So I'm gonna say Klein gets it done. This is gonna be my first official bet on the card. I like Klein. You're getting plus money. I think he gets it done.
Nice, man. One thing I wanted to bring up is I took notes on all of the fighters on the card in terms of their DFS perspective. And one thing that I thought was important to note, obviously, Pulyaev does not, stand out as like a great scorer on DK. Maybe if he got the knockout or something, he could potentially put up a big score. But one thing about Nick Klein, I highlighted him as a guy that, his 26 points against Abdul Malik, that's not going to get you to the promised land on DFS, right? But you go look at that Geraldo Souza fight, like how would that have scored? Right? One takedown, one submission attempt, finishes him within a minute. It's like that would have scored extremely well. So I think Nick Klein at 7.8K, he definitely could turn into a guy that breaks the slate, with his performance because he fights like such a madman, right? On the other side, he could get put on a bad end of a score for Pulyaev, right? And make Pulyaev look good. I definitely acknowledge that possibility. But I look at him and I say to myself, like, kind of dogs that I'm looking for. They've got grappling upside. They've got finishing upside. They could get it done in the first round. There's a lot to like there. Offer some salary relief as well. So just wanted to give that shout out to the people that are, DFS heads. But with that being said, guys, we can move along to the next fight on the card. I almost feel bad for Tresean Gore, man. Like he got to the UFC early and shit just has not worked out. I'm going to kick it to you first here, Cody, but I will acknowledge as I pass it to you, 185 pounds scheduled bout, 189.5 for Gore. He's now in a very clear, in my opinion, loser leaves town type of situation. Like, and it's only for him, right? Like if Adolfo loses one, they're probably like, hey, dust yourself off, man, get another one. But if Tresean Gore loses this fight after his bad run in the UFC and after missing weight, it's over for him as far as I'm concerned. And at this level, and no disrespect intended, just got to call it like you see it. What do you think about this one, Cody?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you could tell from earlier I'm a little fed up with the missing weight by, ridiculous amounts of weight. So, yeah. And I mean, I've had to deal with it firsthand. I've had to deal with it from teammates. And, it's just my absolute pet peeve. It's one thing when you can tell a guy just did everything he could. He's dying on the scale. But, man, he looked fine. He looked fine. He cut, he's smaller than Vieira, man. Get real. Like, I don't know. I think he knows that he cannot lose this fight. So he's trying to, get some sort of advantage here. But you shot yourself in the foot, man, because the UFC doesn't like you. Like, you don't have any leverage. You don't have a pretty record. You don't have a great highlight reel. You're not a star. So when you do things like this, the UFC are looking for a reason. So like you said, he better get a knockout here or you're on the chopping block, like for sure. And I wouldn't be mad at it. I don't like to see people lose their job, man, but it's got to stop. There's got to be punishments. And meanwhile, you got guys that are 7-1 in the UFC. Like it or not, would I personally have him at 5-3? Yes, but he's 7-1 in the UFC, and because people think he's a little boring, he got cut. Martin Budai, or just didn't get re-signed, and the UFC are basically punishing him for friggin' ruining their plans. But yeah, that's a shame. Then you got guys out here like missing weight and cheating every single fight. I mean, it's ridiculous. But, I think Vieira, unlike Buchecha, has rounded out his game a ton. His striking's gotten a ton better. I think he could win a 15-minute fight on the feet with Tresean Gore. Using his kicks. I honestly, as somebody who had what's his name? Freaking wow, it's Action Man. I had Action Man fucking wow. Why is his name just blanking on me right now? Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis. Even though that guy freaking hates me. Dude used to freaking get into it with me on Twitter. But anyways.
He deleted all his socials. He was like, I can't do this anymore. The trolls won. Congrats.
Yeah, this guy, man. Freaking soft ass. But anyways, I had Chris Curtis bet against Vieira, and I walked away pretty impressed with Vieira, honestly, because like I figured he'd struggle getting Curtis down, but man, he did not quit. and he had the gas tank to not only shoot like 25 takedowns, which I know firsthand is so tiring, especially when a guy is sprawling on you left and right. Not only that, but he was throwing volume, throwing kicks. So yeah, I just think he's the better fighter, man. He could win a striking fight. He could win a kickboxing match with Tresean Gore, I think. As long as he doesn't get knocked out, which especially when you got a guy cheating like Tresean Gore has, definitely gives an advantage. Because honestly, before that happened, I was kind of thinking a sneaky play on Vieira KO. I was thinking Vieira could easily like back mount him, flatten him out. And I could just, when I saw Vieira winning, I'm like, he's going to flatten this dude down, belly down. And I'm going to see Gore doing this. And he's just going to be throwing shots like this. And the rear naked choke's going to be there, but maybe he just keeps throwing the hooks. But now I'm thinking, maybe, I don't know. I hate betting stuff like that when you got a guy who blatantly cheated. Because now I don't get that at least like 5% chance he just gets stiffened by a random punch because his brain's dry. So, I don't know.
I feel you, dude.
I want to have that factored in. What'd you say?
I said you got some logic to that. I think when you look at weight cut, like somebody making the weight can be important in knockout props. So I like that capping. Like the one thing I will say is Ben in the chat, I do think actually nailed it. Feel like if Adolfo was a mean bastard, he'd be a problem. Too nice. I don't think Adolfo has any interest in hurting people. I say this as like, if I was in an MMA fight, my number one goal would be to submit somebody with minimal damage possible. Like, again, not because like, I understand fighting, right? If you're out there, you got to do what you got to do. But it's just like, I'm not trying to hurt people in life. Like, if I could get the sub without beating them up, like, God bless. Like, no problem there. I want to win, right? I want to win the competition. It's a competition, right? When you're fighting for your life on the street, it's a different thing. Adolfo Vieira, in my opinion, like, unless it's for his life on the street, this guy doesn't want to hurt anybody, bro. He just wants to win the fight. He wants to win the competition. He's a sportsman, And when I look at his wins in the UFC, it kind of paints that picture. All 5 wins, guys, via submission. This guy knows how he wins fights. He goes, takes people to the ground. When he can submit him, great. He wins the fight. When he can't, he does not win the fight. That's typically been the Adolfo Vieira story, right? And the one thing I will acknowledge, I actually bet Adolfo in that Chris Curtis fight. And hats off to Chris Curtis, man. The guy's fucking takedown defense has held up unbelievably over the course of his career. And in that fight, Adolfo tested it. He tried over and over and over again, could not get him to the ground. And I think part of the problem there was that Chris Curtis is an athletic guy who understands the basics of takedown defense, and he just never settled, right? I think that Tresean Gore, he's kind of a difficult guy to get a beat on. Like I've mentioned this before, handicapping him. Like, how do you handicap a guy that doesn't have very many fights? Like, there's certainly a lot of unknowns when it comes to Tresean Gore. The things that I do know, though, is like Adolfo Vieira has a higher pedigree in grappling. There's no question about that. Adolfo Vieira has fought the better quality of competition overall in the UFC. I believe that. So when I look at Adolfo's body of work, it's superior. But I also have always been a guy that liked Adolfo at plus money, right? Or I like Adolfo when I can get him by sub, or if it's a pick-em price, because I know that Adolfo has a path to victory. But I had the under 1.5 against Fluffy Hernandez. I could tell you, man, I did not think it was going to be cashing because Fluffy Hernandez death gassed him and tapped him out, right? It's like, that was a surprise to me. And when you look at Adolfo, he shoots takedowns willy-nilly, right? He's willing to shoot, and just throw your head and neck down there. And, I'll also say, like, I did not expect Tresean Gore to nearly rip Josh Fremd's neck into 2 pieces, right? Like, I did not think that was going to happen. And Josh Fremd, he went to decision with Fluffy, right? So you see the guy can move, he can wrestle, he can grapple a little bit. It had nothing to do with like, man, my techniques are so good, right? It was like, dude, I got horsepower. I fucking squeezed a hold of your neck and I almost ripped your damn head off. And like Adolfo has shown before, like you grab a hold of his head and neck, sometimes he's like, I'm tired, man. I don't need this shit in my life. I'm bleeding from my face. I don't need this shit in my life. And Adolfo's one of the biggest stars on the card. UFC's investing in BJJ. They're clearly trying to do good things, right? They just fucking fired Martin Buday for not going along with the plan. But when you look at it, it's like these guys, have to go out there and deliver too. And part of the thing that we don't always talk about in MMA is like in that last fight, Buchecha was trying to wrestle a refrigerator, right? Martin Buday is a big man. And he's, for all of his faults, for anything you want to criticize about him, he's won a lot of fights in the heavyweight division by outmanning people, right? By being too much man physically, leaning on them, push them into the cage, like just hold on to them with your big body. And when you look at Tresean Gore, he missed weight for this fight. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He's 4 years younger. Could he be the more physically dynamic athlete? I do think that's possible. And Adolfo, guys, like the way he's built is not made for fighting for 15 minutes. Like he did it against Chris Curtis. It was unbelievable, right? But the other thing is, like, Chris Curtis, dude, we kind of saw it against Max Griffin. Like, he's out there more like to, kind of entertain himself and like, throw these slapping shots and like point at somebody and tell him he's almost like Bobby Green in that way, right? And I feel like Adolfo Vieira does not like getting hit, man. Like, I don't think he likes getting hit. I don't think his reactions to getting hit are great. And again, against Dustin Stoltzfus, he got away with that. Against some of these guys, he got away with that. My only worry here is like Tresean Gore knows what's on the line, most motivated performance of his career. And like, I could go back and point to specific tape. I made a photo journal of Armand Petrosian before that fight. They rebooked it twice with Adolfo Vieira. Of all the times Armand Petrosian had given his back, had somebody on his back, and I was like, how did they keep letting this guy off the hook? I was like, Adolfo will not let him off the hook, and he submits him. But I don't really have Tresean Gore getting audited in the grappling on footage. Like he got taken down by Cody Brundage, popped back up to his feet, and then Cody Brundage knocked him out and screamed, "I thought we were wrestling." It was awesome. It was cool, right? But I'll just also point you guys back to the fact that Adolfo Vieira was nearly knocked out by Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage self-immolated in that fight in ways that are hard to describe. But like, you just have to go back and look and say, like, could Adolfo Vieira have lost that fight? The answer is clearly yes. He got dropped all over the place. He was getting hurt. He got put into a choke attempt by Cody Brundage. So it's just like, when I look at that body of work, I'd say to myself, Adolfo should win this fight. Adolfo by submission, in my opinion, is like the way you get his win equity in this fight for the most part. If you want to go ITD, open up the KO, I understand that. But like, as far as I cap Adolfo Vieira, he's basically a submission guy in the UFC, or he's busting. Like, if he does not get that sub, I don't see him winning many fights. He could win a decision. It would be a close decision. He could maybe knock somebody out. It would be by accident. I don't think he's going to go out there and like punch somebody to hurt them ever in his career, unless we see like a complete mental, update from Adolfo. A software update would be required. I think that Tresean Gore, on the other hand, like he ain't got a problem about doing violence to somebody, bro. You look at that Tresean Gore, lift him by the neck, bro, willing to do violence. Brian Battle, he had a baseball growing out of the side of his head because Tresean hit him so hard in the first round that Brian had to do a reverse marathon, get the guy tired chasing after him, and then beat him in rounds 2 and 3. So I look at like the body of work and I say, I don't know who Tresean Gore is, but like he needs this win, like he needs oxygen, or he's fired. And it's like Adolfo is kind of one of these guys that's like go along to get along. Like, is he pursuing a UFC title, brother? Like, between you and me, I don't think so. I think he's just out here to have fights, have fun, compete, stay active, make some money, do his thing. I think that's it. So like, I can't really be a Adolfo minus 2XX guy. I do think he could win this fight. So again, for me, kind of like Bashi, right? Am I laying the big money line price? I would never. Would I consider the sub prop because I think covers the vast majority of their win equity and they should have a pretty big edge on the ground? Yes. So if you have nothing to add here, Cody, we can move along to the next one. What do you think?
Nah, yeah, I think you explained it pretty well. I mean, maybe you're a little. I mean, I can't even really say that a ton because I ain't trying to bet Vieira at this price either. But I don't know if you actually are betting Gore, but without the weight miss, even though I tend to lean that being an advantage, it's just typically if I haven't already bet when there's a crazy weight miss, no matter which side it's on, I'm just like, I'm just gonna pass. But
you want to hear a wild line move, Cody? How about Tresean Gore by submission, open 20-1? It's down to plus 800 on Bet Online.
Wow, 20-1 would be.
That's it. I mean, dude, 20-1, I think is like close to accurate, but like, I mean, dude, like that's a really substantial move. So interesting stuff here.
Yeah, I really don't
think athleticism-wise, it could be like I don't think he's subbing him, bro, but just like. I think that when Adolfo is gone in terms of cardio, sometimes he's gone. Like he might as well just be a limp body at that point,
Yeah, for sure.
All right. We can move on to the next one here, brother. I will actually leave one last note on that fight, guys. I want to pinhole this. Ends by sub is probably the same price or very similar, within 10, 15, 20 cents of Adolfo by sub. Much better bet. Just because we literally saw the fluffy fight, right? Gore by sub took 20-1 down to 8-1. Why would you be cute? Why would you be silly over 15 cents or whatever? I would much rather have the ends by sub there, not get cute, and give myself, hey, Adolfo's going to push the grappling until he gets the sub or he completely exhausts himself. That's the way I see it. All right, man. Here we go. Next up, we got a 135-pound bout. Rinya Nakamura taking on Nathan Fletcher. We'll have Cody start us off. Big favorite here for Rinya Nakamura. You mentioned that he was a big favorite last time against Gafurov. One of those times where you watch back your show and you're like, why the fuck did I not bet Gafurov? I literally said, like, Gafurov's had 26 fights. Gafurov could defend takedowns. Gafurov's only been finished one time as a pro. I make this whole case for him and then don't fucking bet him. Really disappointing, but man, I'm passing it to you. What do you think about this fight? Nathan Fletcher on the other side. I'll just be honest, not a guy I've been super high on. Can he break through in this fight?
No, I mean, I get it. I get why you wouldn't be super high on him. And, Nakamura, that could definitely have been a one-off performance that last fight. But, yeah, no, I'm taking a shot here on the underdog, man. This is one that I just pinned from the beginning. I'm just like, nah, this line's off, and I'm going to bet it. I'll sit back and wait, and that's what I did. And then, hopefully I don't get reverse CLV'd, but, I still got a pretty solid line. Whatever, it is what it is. Sometimes I will genuinely wait until the very end, but when I saw +1 or +330, I was like, all right, actually, I think that's still there on bet 105, 333. Yeah, just for me, it's like, Nakamura, solid guy, like from what we've seen so far, solid wrestling, good power, but I just don't, and yeah, he probably can get a couple takedowns here, but I just don't think, I've seen anything to show me that I can ever trust him at even near this kind of number. So, do I think he should be the favorite? Yeah. But I just think this is a time where you just have to straight up be like, I see enough of a path where I think this fight's probably going to be pretty competitive. I don't think Fletcher's just going to get absolutely dog walked. Nakamura, I don't think he has the jiu-jitsu to like take him down and just control him for the entire round, or, ground and pound him, finish him, or find a sub. I don't really see that happening, man. I think he can get takedowns, but I'll be a little surprised if he just takes him down and steamrolls him, finishes him. So, I think the grappling exchanges can be competitive. Yeah, I just think the line should be closer, man. So I'm going to take a shot. I think the striking could be pretty competitive. Nakamura is going to have to wrestle, man. If he doesn't wrestle, this fight's going to be close. Unless he just knocks out Fletcher, which I will say Nakamura does have power. But it's just basic striking. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't set anything up. He's just throwing big, heavy punches. And if he lands on Fletcher's chin, he could put him out. Otherwise, he's going to have to he's probably going to have to put together like 6-7 takedowns, I think, to win a decision here. So, I'm going to go with Fletcher to make this interesting. Take a big old dog shot here. One of my favorite underdogs on the card.
Respect, my brother. I always love a big underdog take. I always love one delivered with confidence, but unfortunately, we're going to be on opposite sides of the coin on this one. And, I wrote up in my article why I thought Rinya Nakamura would be an under-owned fighter on DFS this week. And if you look at the big favorites, right, there's a lot of guys priced in that $9K salary range this week, right? We've got a lot of big favorites on the card, Bashi, among others. And Rinya Nakamura is projected the lowest owned among that group by a pretty substantial margin. When I looked at that, I thought recency bias right away. And then I went back to go check if my brain was like malfunctioning. Rinya Nakamura controlled Carlos Vieira for 13 minutes on the mat. Carlos Vieira is a BJJ black belt, I believe. He's a guy that comes from the 10th Planet system, the Ryan Hall system, 50-50. He's kind of got a background in grappling that's pretty deep and attempts subs, gets pretty aggressive. And, I thought Rinya showed his physical dominance in that fight, and to your point, he's not a jiu-jitsu savant. So he's out there just wrestling hard for the full 13 minutes, that he was controlling him. But he was able to do so, right? And I think Vieira may have busted up his shoulder at some point in that fight as well. But then you go back and you look, and it's like, okay, was it a one-time thing? No, against Fernie Garcia, 4 takedowns, 9+ minutes of control. Muin Gafurov, guys, got submitted by shooting a takedown against, I think it was Said Nurmagomedov, caught him in that ninja choke, right? He's never been finished otherwise in 26 professional MMA fights, many of them in one championship, many of them in like pretty high-level competitions, right? I faded him, by the way. Let's go back to my early days betting on this. I faded him with Chad and Hellinger on the Contender Series. I was like, fuck this guy from 1. Chad and Hellinger is the real deal, Holyfield. I bet him at plus 285. I bet him at plus 360. I bet him all the way on up. The market kept fading me. I was like, no, it is Chad and Hellinger. Chad and Hellinger by split decision. The Canadian Alpha before Ayman Zahabi. You understand? When you go back and look, Rinya Nakamura, right? Against Muin Gafurov, this guy has 26 pro fights. The guy is way deeper into his career. The guy has a good jiu-jitsu game. The guy's got wrestling, and the guy can strike. So he's well-rounded. He knows exactly who he is inside the octagon. And he went out there and gave a kid a veteran lesson. He kind of showed him, hey, you know what? You're not ready for these steps up in competition quite yet. Okay, so what does the UFC do? They send Rinya back, and they say, hey, here's this Nathan Fletcher kid. And you go back and watch Nathan Fletcher. I like Callan Lawford. Most people don't like him. I like Callan Lawford. Callan Lawford's 2-2 in the UFC. He could arguably be like, 1-3 in the UFC, right? Depends on who you ask. 0-4 in the. It's like Lawford's had a tough go of it early on, right? His easiest fight was against Nathan Fletcher. He secured many takedowns. He got more than, I think, 5 minutes of control time. He did his job, right? Went out there, took him down, did what he needed to do. You look at the fight before that. Zigomantis Ramaska had multiple minutes of control. If my memory serves, he had a submission attempt against Nathan Fletcher. Disaster, right? I thought Zigomantis, confession time, I thought Zigomantis would win. He missed weight or had a staph infection or had some shit going on, and I didn't feel as great about it. I don't think I got to the window, and then he ended up losing the fight. But I hated the footage that I saw from Nathan Fletcher on The Ultimate Fighter. Ken Offley has not won a fight in the UFC. He's looked mostly under-skilled at the UFC level and under-physical at the UFC level, and Nathan Fletcher gassed out and kind of quit. That's my opinion, right? You can quit by giving somebody your neck and letting them choke you out, or you can quit by being like, I'm not going to try and win anymore. I'm kind of just trying to survive, get to the end, they ring the bell and be done with it. And he let Ken Offley out-physical him, out-grapple him, out-hustle him, out-position him. And I think that if you're doing that against Ken Offley, it's going to be a disaster against Rinya. If Rinya comes out here and has a little more confidence than he did in his last fight and knows hey, this guy has the same amount of pro experience as me. This guy is not better than me physically. I think he's going to go out there and kind of, pick this guy up and slam him on his head, pick him up every which way but loose, and probably finish him too. I do think the power difference is there. I think the physicality difference is there. So I think Rinya's going to win. I think he's going to wash him in rounds 2 and 3. But I also acknowledge that I could be an idiot, right? I thought Nathan Fletcher was going to lose to Zigomantis Ramaska, so I've clearly underrated the guy a bit. But I also thought that he was going to lose to Callan Lawford. And I do think that he's going to lose to Rinya Nakamura. I think when you look at the physicality of these two guys, Ken Offley, I don't think is sniffing takedowns or control time against Rinya, period. So I just think that, for me, is enough to say I like Rinya to win this one. And by the way, if it plays out on the feet, I think Fletcher might have a little bit more volume. But I think you mentioned it. Rinya could just cold cock this guy with a left hand, dude. I think he has real power, and I don't think Nathan Fletcher does. I think Fletcher needs to throw, 4 or 5 in combination and land an elbow and kind of, give you a cut or something to get some real damage going. I think Rinya Nakamura might knock him out by accident. I think he's that kind of athlete. So for me, Rinya's the pick, but I do acknowledge, again, when a guy just laid an egg for you at minus 450 or whatever, you don't go play him or something or feel super confident next time out. But I think when I look at matchmaking, this is the kind of guy I'd give Rinya if I was in the chair. And again, if he loses this one, it's he's not who we thought he was. Move on. Next prospect, right? But it's like this kid comes from a real wrestling background. You got one fight where you go out there, don't shoot takedowns and kind of get a veteran lesson. I think the next fight, you shoot 50 takedowns. You come out very aggressive. And I think he has an opponent that he can paint that canvas on. So ultimately, give me Rinya Nakamura, KO or decision. That's the pick for me. All right, man. Next up, we got Danny Silva taking on Kevin Vallejos. There was some speculation, some rumors being driven by the Kevin Vallejos Twitter account saying, I don't know if he's going to make weight this week. And all of a sudden, Danny Silva does make the weight, right? 144.5, no problems there. 146, exactly at the limit for Kevin Vallejos on the other side. I'm excited about this fight, man. I think it could be an interesting, fun scrap. But ultimately, I think, I've talked about before with some fighters, I think their pressure, their willingness to engage in the pocket will be their undoing in a matchup. And I think that in this matchup, Danny Silva's toughness, his willingness to engage, I think is going to get him spilled. So ultimately, I think Kevin Vallejos probably knocks him out in the first 2 rounds. I think Danny Silva does not block shots very well. I think he's a little too willing to eat them. I think he'd be very wise to come out here wrestling hard, aggressively from the outset, try and get this kid's lungs pumping, try and avoid the big, heavy, stinging shots at the beginning when Vallejos is fast, when Vallejos is coming out there super aggressive. But ultimately, I think that, Vallejos is a guy that I just rate on a tier above Danny Silva. I picked Danny Silva to lose a split decision to Josh Kulabau. He won a split decision there. Hats off to him. I picked him to win a split decision against Lucas Almeida. He won a split decision there. So I actually called both of his first 2 fights in the UFC to go split decisions. Both of them did. He won them both. Hats off to the guy, right? Did his job. But ultimately, split decisions aren't super convincing for me. Getting landed on like 200 times by Angel Pacheco is not very convincing to me. And I just think if you gave Kevin Vallejos Angel Pacheco, he's probably sending that guy to the hospital badly. So I just think that's the difference for me. I think Kevin Vallejos hits a little bit harder. And I think that Kevin Vallejos maybe a little bit more polish on the feet. So ultimately, Danny Silva, he's a workman-like guy. He goes out there, fights hard. I understand that people want that dog shot for that reason. You're paying a hype tax on the Vallejos side. But again, we try and give analysis, predictions, what we think is going to happen. And I don't want to give you guys a dog just because, hey, he's a dog, I always try and make it why I believe it, right? And we talked about Davey Grant last week. We talked about some guys, they got that live dog shot. We talked about guys on this show that I think got a live dog shot. Danny Silva, if he goes out here wrestling, I think he's got a live dog shot. If he just goes out here and wants to mix it up on the feet, I think he's going to knock the fuck out, honestly. So that's the way I see it, man, and I think it should be a fun scrap. What do you think about this one? I know people are high on Danny Silva. I think Danny Silva is one of these guys, maybe a Cub Swanson product if my memory serves, but certainly one of these guys that's being mentored by a UFC-level fighter. He's being, kind of pushed behind the scenes in that way as well. But Vallejos on the other side done his job accordingly in the UFC. First-round knockout in his debut, left absolutely no doubt against Sung Woo Choi. And the fight prior to that sent Cam Teague down a long walk down a short road, in that fight. And Cam Teague, I don't think is a bad fighter either. Has a win over Austin Lingo, is a solid guy, invited back to Contender Series this year. So I'm fired up for this fight. I think it's going to be a scrap while it lasts. But ultimately, I think power makes the difference here. I think Kevin Vallejos, the 23-year-old, is going to knock out Danny Silva. Cody, the floor is yours, my brother. What do you think? Is this a dog shot that we should be considering?
I hate that these fights are back-to-back because it really just going to make it seem like, I'm doing it for the hell of it. But, yeah, I'm taking another dog shot here. I just think the line's off, man. It's, again, I play these long-term. Like you said, the problem with this is you always do have there was a chance last week I could have ended up looking like an absolute fool. And because I took 6 underdogs, I had 6 bets. All 6 were 4 of the 6 big underdogs. I ended up hitting 4 of the 6. I hit Guskov, Grant, Budai, and Salikov. Ended up looking dumb in the MAB fight. I mean, he had his moment there, and it was almost plus 500. But when he broke his nose, I was like, oh. But for the most part, anyways, that could have ended up being a situation where, the underdogs come in, get smoked. I go from looking like a genius to looking like an idiot. And could these 2 fights go back to back and both these big favorites? Look, just like the last fight where I can understand why the line is what it is, I can. I like Vallejos. I actually hate that I'm being put in a position where I have to fade him because I'm a big fan of the guy. He's got a fun style. I was saying just because he's kind of like an undersized featherweight who is throwing boxer or is mostly a boxer, throwing good body shots. I'm like, okay, kind of like Walmart Topuria right now. But no, I mean, I don't know if I have the same grappling, if I see the same grappling, but definitely solid. I think that style works pretty well for his size, being, like I said, a little bit undersized. But you are giving me the guy who's more in his physical prime so far, in Danny Silva, the naturally bigger guy, who's got a decent amount of UFC experience. He's been to 15-minute decisions in the UFC. Like, at the end of I could sit here and poke holes through all these Vallejos opponents, but at the end of the day, has Danny Silva fought the highest level guys? No, but he's going 15 minutes, and that doesn't, as much as I'd love to see him finishing some of these guys, that's great experience. And 23, it's like I just think this could be one of those little too much. I always advocate for people coming into the UFC a little later. Like, what's the point of coming into the UFC at like 21, man? Take your time. Come in when you're like 26, and then hit your prime when you're fighting ranked guys, right when you're hitting like your physical prime. I don't know. I just don't think there's a lot of benefits to coming to the UFC in your lower 20s. Go get a nice, pretty record, and grow your following locally, and get better, most importantly. And I think this could be one of those, got fast tracked a little bit. I'm not saying Danny Silva is a world beater, but I just mean to the UFC. I think he has skills, man, but he's still an undersized 45er who's 23 years old, and he's like damn near 7-1, or no, he's like minus. What is he? I thought the line was getting even crazier now. I think he's like what right now?
Here, I got fight odds pulled up. Let me check.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but minus.
No, I mean, he's plus 335, minus 435 for Vallejos on the biggest, sharpest book in the world. Or I should say the sharpest book in the world, approximately. But the biggest would definitely be 365.
Yeah, I mean, but anyways, yeah. So I can see. Oh, and the other thing I like, and I know you said you touched on it. Vallejos has power. Danny Silva. Sometimes he could just, he might just stay around the pocket a little too much for somebody with power like Vallejos, but I really think this fight's going to go 15, man. I bet the fight goes the distance at plus 140. Yeah, I think this thing's going to go. I think both guys, yeah, they have especially Vallejos has finishing potential, but I think both guys are durable. Both guys are tough. This is going to go 15, and maybe it ends up being a Vallejos decision, but I'm willing to take a shot. I think the line's off, so even if Vallejos wins, I think it's going to be a decision. So I'm going to try to double up there. Fight goes the distance, and a shot on Silva.
I think that's totally reasonable. I think just on principle, if you want to fade a guy based on, hey, I'm getting the older guy in this case, right? I always talk about whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of 25, right? And 38, right? There's differences, right? But when you just look at like 25 or younger, I'm always a little bit hesitant. I want to at least see, do I think they're in their physical prime? Do I think they can handle the physical maturity? Although we should note as well, one thing I'm noticing in the high school wrestling scene, right? These guys are making world teams now, man. Like, these guys are getting more competitive with grown adults when they're kids, when they're in high school. It's just, for whatever reason, they're closing the gap. And I don't think it was always like that, right? It used to be college guys, maybe guys first year out of college. That was like a lot of guys that would make the world team. Some guys in their 30s that were just former college greats would be still making teams. Brother, now it's Jax Forrest and PJ Duke. They're 18 years of age. They're going to math class, and then they show up at the world team trials and make the team. These kids are kind of peaking athletically a little bit younger. And so I do want to be cognizant of that in the UFC as well. It's a little bit different, but you also have to note Kevin Vallejos, it's not his first go around this party, right? He did fight Gene Silva. He did fight him for the hard 15, and he did it in the Apex Center, right? At the Contender Series. By the way, guys, he won that first round against Gene Silva. Gene Silva had to rally back, win the second and third rounds, kind of turn up the pace on him. Gene Silva has not gone the distance yet in the UFC, guys. He's knocked out every opponent or submitted every opponent, finished everybody. Nobody's made it to the cards with this guy. Kevin Vallejos did. So I think you got to give some credit and respect to the guy. But on the other side, you got to acknowledge he's probably going to be in a real fight here. This guy's going to be throwing back at him. I think power is an intangible. I think it's a difference maker. I think when you look at Danny Silva and he's fighting an Angel Pacheco, who I will grant is tough as an old leather boot, but is not as athletic, is not as skilled, is not as, frankly, durable, right? He got dropped in that fight as well. He landed 200 strikes and could not finish the show with Angel Pacheco. If you let Kevin Vallejos hit Angel Pacheco 200 times, the man might be dead. I don't mean to be, flippant, but truly, I think Kevin Vallejos hits differently, right? I don't think you want to absorb 200 significant strikes from Kevin Vallejos. I think it'd change your life. So that, for me, one thing I wanted to say as well, undersized with power reminds me of his fellow countryman, Francisco Prado. I think Kevin Vallejos is much more talented than Prado. And his grappling is still a question mark. So if you got a question mark in the grappling, maybe the plus 3XX shot is warranted. But for me, got to just call it like I see it. I think Vallejos wins the fight. I think he knocks him out. Next up, we move to the main card. And my man, I've been in the uncomfortable position of saying, I think this favorite's going to win. I think this favorite's going to win. I hate that. I think this underdog's going to win, man. I think Neil Magny, I'm a little bit surprised by the price. I've been the biggest easy dose guy that I can remember. I laid 4 units on minus 200 against Benoit Saint-Denis, who is another one of my guys. I made a lot of money on BSD when he dropped down to 155. But I just thought to myself, easy dose, this guy's a murderer, right? At 170, big, powerful, can spin kick your head off. He's got some jiu-jitsu as well. But then you watch, his recent fights, you kind of see where he's at. He's become very low volume. He's become a little bit passive out there. I think his grappling's not as assertive as it once was. When he does try and rely on that, I think it gasses him out. I think the finishing instincts that used to be absolutely premium have kind of dropped off a little bit as well. We've seen Zaleski dos Santos kind of let Renat Fakhretdinov off the hook, hurt him bad in round 3, didn't have the gas to close the show on him. Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov, you're going to split decisions there. It's well, that's a bad look. It's that's a guy who's basically just throwing a jab and stepping to the right, throwing the jab again. He was able to go to a close decision. You look at Zaleski when he fought the Leech, right? And now I'm going back an ancient history lesson. He kind of just got walked down with pretty basic pressure in the boxing and kind of got beat up in that fight. And I think that Easy Dose at his best, the most prime, dangerous version of Easy Dose, probably spin kicks Neil Magny into the third dimension, right? But I don't think that's who we're getting, right? At 38 years of age, going on 39, I don't think he's the same guy. And I think when you look at a guy who's dynamic, athletic, doing spinning shit, doing craziness, right? Relying on being a freak athlete, that shit, when you get old, tends to just go and just take a crater nosedive into the ground. And a lot of those guys can't sustain their same game plans, right? Tony Ferguson in his athletic prime wins all these fights. And the second his athletic prime is over, basically his athletic prime was beaten out of him by by Justin Gaethje, right? After that point, the guy was never the same. He could hardly win a fight, right? His reaction time went down, his speed went down, and the guy just could not see what was coming. He could not react quickly enough. He couldn't win fights. And I think that when you look at Zaleski, man, that fight that he had against Chitty, I think that at his best, he beats Chitty, right? I think he takes him down. I think he kind of owns him in the mat. And I felt like instead he was kind of stuck in the mud there, man. I felt like he was moving a little bit slower than we're used to. And here's the difference for me. I think that when you look at Neil Magny, Neil Magny loses to a lot of guys he's supposed to, right? You look at and Dixon, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to make my whole argument, and then you can disagree if you disagree. But you look at Neil Magny, he's 37, right? He's not a young man. He's 37 going on 38. Could he get knocked out here? Absolutely, right? You have to acknowledge that. He could get knocked out. Could he get submitted? It's Neil Magny, right? I've called him a fish before. When he faces real grapplers, sometimes he gets submitted. Sometimes he looks like a fish. But when you look at Neil Magny, he's fighting upper echelon guys, young guys on the come up, staking their claim in the top 15. And that's a different fucking quality of guy, right? Michael Morales, Carlos Prates, these guys are fighting for top spots in the welterweight division, period. And you know who else was? Mike Malott. Mike Malott was one win away from the top 15. He was on a nice streak. He was feeling himself. He's the best hope of Canada's welterweight division, much less their men's side of the game. And he went out there and he won 14 minutes, and Neil Magny still beat him. Because Neil Magny, when he doesn't get beat, if you do not finish Neil Magny, he doesn't quit on himself, bro. Against Ian Gary, he had a million reasons to quit on himself. Didn't do it. Just kept in the fight as his legs were getting fundamentally destroyed underneath him, right? This guy's just standing there taking him, trying to win the fight. Neil Magny is eminently leg kickable. He's not the best grappler you've ever seen. He's not the best striker you've ever seen. But you look at his body of fucking work. He's one of the winningest fighters in UFC history, period. He has 22 wins in this promotion, right? He's been fighting around the same times that Elijah Zaleski has, right? But he's fought way fucking more, and he's fought better guys, and he has better wins, and he's been around for just as long, basically. So I just look at the body of work, and I say, I have a slightly younger guy in Neil Magny, whose game has always been workman-like offense. Go out there, grab a hold of somebody, put them in the clinch, make it awkward, make it a grind, make them tired, make them quit. And he's done it to many, many guys. And then I have Zaleski on the other side, who at the best of times, guys, it is physical prime, got rocked on the chin by Luigi Vendramini, got hurt in that fight, got his back taken, had to recover and rally against a fucking lightweight that didn't hack it in the UFC. Against Benoit Saint Denis, guys, he beat him up so bad, and with the corrupt referee, Vashiev Kishliev, or whatever that guy's name is, who basically just watched Benoit Saint Denis die in the first 2 rounds. Benoit Saint Denis' corpse came out and started having success again in round 3 because Zaleski was so tired. So when I look at this guy who cannot finish a fight where the guy is basically folded in half from a body kick because he's too tired, when the guy is getting gassed in the second round against Chitty and getting finished, when the guy is going out there and putting in a lot of awkward, sloppy performances, letting guys off the hook, none of that speaks to, I feel confident he's going to go out there and outwork Neil Magny, who's the ultimate workhorse of the welterweight division. Like, could Magny get clipped? Yes. But look at what D-Rod just did against Kevin Holland. He went out there, dug deep. He got his 10th win in the UFC. Double-digit wins for D-Rod. You know what D-Rod did when he was winning against Neil Magny? He got out-hustled in round 3. He got ripped back to the ground by a guy who could actually process grapple instead of Kevin Holland, who wants to make it a meme and rolling around doing all the crazy shit. Neil Magny, front headlock, snapped him back to the ground, finished him, closed the show with that choke in the 3rd round when he knew he needed it. His coaches told him, go out there and wrestle this guy, grapple this guy, get him to the ground. You have more cardio, break him right now. And he did it because Neil Magny is a coachable athlete, and he's a guy that's made the most of his skills. So for me, you give a 37-year-old a skill set that's translatable, that works at any point of life. He beat Jeff Neal. He beat real guys that were ranked in the top 15 and fringe top 15 guys like Mike Malott. And on the other side, Zaleski has been fighting average fights against average fighters. And the Renat fight was a great fucking comeback in a fight that he was losing clearly. And I had him bet that night, right? Thank you for the draw, my brother. I appreciate you going out there and doing what you needed to do. Zaleski still has 2 minutes of fucking awesome capoeira in his system. But beyond that, man, I just believe he's a gassier guy. I believe he's a guy that kind of gets some self-doubt in his mind if shit starts going the wrong way. I think Neil Magny's clinch style would frustrate him. I don't think he's going to want to work out of the clinch. I think he's got Jose Aldo syndrome, bro. He'll put his butt to the cage. He'll be like, fuck this, man. Come on, ref, do something about it. And if that doesn't happen, I think Neil Magny's going to win this fight. So ultimately, man, that's my diatribe on why I think the Haitian sensation is a live underdog this weekend. What do you think, brother?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I'm picking Magny outright, and I bet him. I think he wins the fight, man. I just think whereas the last 2, it's like, oh, this line's wide. You know, you got to take a shot. I genuinely think Magny should be the favorite. He's going to win the fight. He's going to be the minute winner here, man. And yeah, there's always the chance that he gets taken down, or Zaleski, you know, early on could get a takedown. But honestly, that could be a bad decision for Zaleski if he does that. If he does that, he better find a sub, because Magny's going to make him work. Like you said, man, the thing about Magny is he's made the most of what he has, and that's why he's still in the UFC doing the damn thing this long after. You know, it's not like he's got a ton of physical gifts, but he's got a hell of a fight IQ, and that's what's kept him in the game so long. And that fight IQ is exactly why he's going to get the win here, man. He's going to put Zaleski up against the cage, clinch him a ton. You know, yeah, it's not going to be the most entertaining fight, but you can go out there and get knocked out against Prates. You can go out there. I mean, they did Ian Gary, and people want to like rewrite history now, but with Mike Malott, but you know, he was supposed to get smoked there too. And Malott is still pretty good. I bet Magny there by TKO and hit like a 28-1. Yeah, no, that was one of my most fun cashes of all time. But I was going absolutely, and I knew it was going to happen too. Like when he flopped to his back, I was like, oh my God, this fight's over. He's done. And the most pitter patter pillow shots, and I'm just screaming, stop the fight. But anyways, Magny, he's been sent in there as lamb to the slaughter 4 times in a row. Got away with got spoiled the party once of the 4 times. And this is genuinely the UFC going like, all right, like it's not like this is some bum, but they pay Magny too much to give him a bum. So they're like, all right, out of the guys we're reasonably down to give you, this is the bottom rung. And even Magny said, like, basically said what I just said. Like he said, whereas, Prates and Michael Morales and Gary, these were like the new generation. This is my peer. And what he meant by that is, I'm supposed to win this fight. And he said that straight up. Like, I feel like this is a fight where I'm supposed to win. So, I doubt he even knows that he's the underdog. He's like, the way his vibe was like, I'm supposed to win this fight, but I'm not going to take him lightly. But I'm going to do what I have to do to win the fight. And that translated to me like, he knows what's up. Like, it's one thing to get knocked out by these young guys that are 7-1 favorites. This is a winnable fight. Another guy who's actually older than you, go in here, get a win, and then we're going to put you up against the next guy that we think is going to knock you out in the first round. So this is how he extends his career. He goes and gets one right here, and he's going to cash. He's going to win this fight by decision. Neil Magny all day, man.
How about this, brother? In my write-up, I said Neil Magny round 3 or decision. I don't think Zaleski likes being pushed in these fights anymore, man. Leach hurt him in the 3rd round of that fight. That was a younger Zaleski. That was a fresher Zaleski, man. And I think that when you look at, how he's been looking in some of these late rounds, brother, not loving the look. And Neil Magny turns it up in round 3. He's a 5-round fighter. So I think Neil Magny's got a chance to come out there and turn up on this guy. And I wanted to just read off, guys, because I put this in my article preview for Roto Grinders. Neil Magny, since 2020, has defeated Mike Malott, 5-1 in the UFC. Phil Rowe, 4-3 in the UFC. Daniel Rodriguez, 10-4 in the UFC. Max Griffin, 8-10 in the UFC. Jeff Neal, 8-4 in the UFC. And Robbie Lawler, former UFC welterweight champion, and 15-10 in the UFC. That's all since 2020, right? Alizé Zaleski on the other side, guys. His wins since 2020 are Zach Scroggin, who are you? Abubakar Nurmagomedov. That's the last time that guy fought. The guy literally has never fought since, right? That was in 2023. Benoit Saint Denis, he's a 155er. So he beat Zach Scroggin, who I think is a 155er, but I don't want to disparage the man because I don't know who he is, right? I hardly remember that fight. I watch every fight in the UFC. Then you look back, he beats Abubakar, the worst Nurmagomedov that there ever was. That's a fact. He lost to he beats Benoit Saint Denis. He beats Alexei Kunchenko. If y'all remember that dude, he was not even real in PFL. He was not real in Bellator. Like, Kunchenko just didn't have it. No disrespect. Then you look at Curtis Millender. Guys, Curtis Millender has the worst grappling I can remember. Of a guy that was in the UFC. And again, no disrespect to Curtis, but he got audited on the mat like it was his job. So you just look back and you're like, who is Zaleski beating that's on the same level, that's commensurate? Yes, he's got a great win over Sean Strickland. I tell people that when they used to try and assure me Zaleski was a bum on the internet. I would be like, guys, you're aware that he knocked out Sean Strickland cold in the 1st round, right? But when you look at beyond that, is he overhyped at this point? Are people falling too much in love with Zaleski? Minus 185 at 38 years of age, when you have no work rate whatsoever to speak of. And you want to see how this is reflected, guys. It's not just my opinion. This is the last time I'll hit you guys with the DFS notes off the top rope. 100+ points in only 2 of 11 UFC wins. The guy has been the death of fantasy scoring. He's not a very efficient fighter. He doesn't go out there and do all that much that scores. So is that going to reflect well to the judges? I wouldn't think so. By the way, on the other side, Neil Magny, 75+ points in 18 out of 22 UFC wins. Did you hear when I said 22 UFC wins? This guy doesn't fucking play games, man. He comes out there and fights hard for your money. I think Neil Magny's the pick to click as a dog this weekend, and we'll leave it there.
Yes, sir.
Next up, my brethren, we've got Carol Hosa taking on Nora Cornole. We got a ladies showcase. And yet, no disrespect intended to my guy, Curtis, man. He's a fun fighter, good fighter, has good hands as well. Make no mistake, Curtis Millender can scrap. The jiu-jitsu wasn't his forte, let's say. But you look at this fight, man. Speaking of jiu-jitsu not being your forte, I think that another judge might have given Nora Cornole a loss against, Jocelyn Edwards in her UFC debut. She got controlled for the vast majority of that fight, but she was able to land some damaging shots, get up when she needed to, land a couple shots. It was in her home country, crowd rallies behind her, and they gave it to her, right? Now I got everybody going to bat for Curtis in the chat. I'm just playing. This is jokes, all right? I'm not trying to disrespect. But when you look back, right, Nora Cornole, we'll say way worse grappling than Curtis Millender. Let's be fair, right? I think Nora Cornole showed off against Haley Cowan. She's getting better at trying to get aggressive with the subs, right? Trying to improve that aspect of her game. She's a physical enough girl. So, you don't want to disparage Nora Cornole. She's a tough chick. She fights hard, Muay Thai background, does a lot right. She was a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in last year, right? So is she a purple belt now? Maybe, probably not. So it's probably a blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu, maybe a good one. And then she's taking on Carol Hosa, who's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, been around for a while, thrown 100 plus significant strikes in a lot of UFC fights. So she knows she can go out there and throw that volume, go out there and put up a pretty big amount of strikes. And on the other side, Cornole, not really a super high volume striker, right? A very powerful striker. She picks her spots. She can go in combination. But I look at this fight as you got the younger girl in Carol Hosa. She's got vastly more professional experience, both as a professional MMA fighter and specifically in the UFC. She's 7-4 in the UFC. And you look at those losses, guys. She has one loss in the UFC where she did not give up at least one takedown. And that was against Irene Aldana. She landed 200 significant strikes to Irene Aldana's 145, but many of them were low kicks. So unfortunately, it was it's a wash. They gave it to Aldana. It was a close enough fight. But it was a fight of the night war between two women who just landed a shitload of strikes on each other, right? So that's Carol Hosa's only loss where she didn't get taken down. You look at Norma Dumont, big physical girl, strong, black. I think a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If I'm wrong, she's a brown belt. Time on the mats, no doubt about it. You start looking through man, who are the girls that actually beat Carol Hosa? And many of them have a strong wrestling pedigree. Sarah McMahon was a silver medalist in the Olympics, right? Very good wrestler. I bet Carol Hosa that night to win via finish because Sarah McMahon used to be known for being a quitter, no disrespect. And Sarah McMahon was able to grit through it, won a sloppy round 3. I was there in person in Columbus, Ohio. So I've been in person watching Carol Hosa let me down. You guys might be able to isolate on the audio at UFC Columbus, me going, elbows, Carol, elbow. I was trying to convince her she wouldn't do it. But you look at the fight overall, and I just say to myself, if she can't win this fight, Carol Hosa's just got to take a huge stock drop in the UFC because she's been here a long time. She's taken on a 35-year-old with very limited experience who's got a poor ground game, and her wins are over mostly bad fighters in the UFC. So Jocelyn Edwards is a good fighter. That's a super questionable win. Her other wins are over Melissa Mullins, who is still a jury's out, 2-2 in the UFC, looked awful in her losses, looked okay in her wins. Then you look at, the other girl that she beat most recently, Haley Cowan. I don't think Haley Cowan's very good. Right. And I had said that from her time on Contender Series basically from any time we've seen Haley Cowan as a prospect introduced to the UFC architecture. I was no, not for me. And I think Carol Hosa, again, she should have a ground advantage in this fight. She should have a ability to compete in the striking in this fight. She has a massive experience at. She's been to decision a bajillion times. Carol Hosa needs to win this fight or ask yourself some hard questions about what she's doing here because she's 30 years of age and she's been fighting for a long time. She did say, I will note in the interviews this week, that she used to be at a chaotic training camp and she had a bunch of shit going on in her life, and now she's at a much better training camp. Fighters are liars, so take that for whatever it's worth. But ultimately, I feel like Carol Hosa, should win this fight via sub or decision. If she is who her record says she is, what her credentials say she is, that's what she should do here. But ultimately, it's a WMMA fight. So if you're taking the dog, I can't blame you at all. My brother Nora Cornole is violent. She's aggressive, physical. I just think at 35, she's been training MMA for 4 years, bro. If she can win this fight, all you got to say is, what is WMMA? Is it real? and ask hard questions. But I think Carol Hosa should win this fight. What do you think, man?
Yeah, nah, I mean, you pretty much broke it down exactly how I would, man. This, when I first saw this matchup, I'm like, oh, maybe, I figured Rosa would be a bigger favorite, and I'm like, okay, maybe I take a look at this underdog, but nah, I think the line's probably about what it should be. This is a big step down for Rosa, man. Cornole, like she's outperformed who what a lot of people thought. I bet her against Mullins, but then I bet her, which that was a fun cash, but then I bet her against
I had Mullins ITD, and I was like, why didn't you take fight not to go the distance?
Yeah, those ones suck. I've had a similar miss, something like that, where you could have gave up a couple cents and been safe. But yeah, I just think she just, I don't know what she could, like, what her real path to beat Rosa would be. I don't see her coming in here and like wrestling heavy, so it's probably just like outstriking Rosa, and Rosa's pretty good, man, if you're gonna just try to outstrike her. So I don't know. I think this is Rosa's fight to lose, man. It's also pretty surprising to see like she's actually 5 years younger. Like, I don't know. The Rosa has like all the tangible advantages, man. She should win this fight, man. I don't have a whole lot to add. It's probably about what it should be. So
I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe she dates Denise Gomes. Do you know that? Like, do you know if I'm right about that? Carol
I
Hosa?
think you're right. Yeah.
And the thing I'll also add is that both of them were competing on those. Like now it's called UFC BJJ. It was previously called like the Fight Pass Invitational, and I believe both of them competed on those events. So again, like, is Carol Hosa converting at the UFC level? No. She's literally been to decision, I think, in all 11 of her UFC fights. But is she working outside of her job to try and improve her submission grappling skills? Clearly, the answer is yes. And so I do think that's worth noting. Did see some people saying they're looking at the Carol sub in the chat. My guy, High Watermark, asked about Cornole by finish only at plus 100. I'll be honest, I hate that. Not because Carol is a proven finisher. She's the opposite of that. But I just think the number's not good enough. If I was to get involved, I'd rather just take the money line, hope for a greasy split decision to manifest for me, give myself that finishing equity. But I just don't think like Carol Hosa has no finishing equity. I think she does have some finishing equity. If you could land 150 significant strikes, if you could attempt subs against a blue belt and you're a black belt, I think you could have finishing equity. So for that reason, I would avoid that potential landmine. But I do acknowledge it's a weird fight. I've heard a lot of guys who I respect on Nora Cornole this week, but my fundamentals point me to Carol Hosa. So that's the way I'm going. Dude, I think this might be the most fascinating fight on the card in a lot of ways. We'll kick it to you first, Cody. I won't color bias it, anything like that. Estevam Ribovics, 14-2, 155 pounds, taking on Elves Brener here. They're both 3-2 in the UFC. They're both on the right side of 30. They're both 5'10". Absolute scrap. What do you think about this one, my man? I'm fired up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a brawl, man. I really do. I think I don't see a whole lot of grappling. We've seen both guys get taken down, and both guys could, especially like Brener, he could potentially try to do some grappling. We saw Ribovics give up like 11 takedowns to Loic, but that dude is a freaking tank, man. So, until he gasses out, that dude is, he can drag you down just off sheer strength. But, as much as I hate to say something like that, but anyways, I don't think they're going to do a ton of grappling. They're probably just going to stand and just friggin' brawl. And, Ribovics, I probably count on him to throw a little bit more. And I actually have a sneaky feeling, like the Vallejo's fight, that this could be a sneaky over. Like, even though I think they're going to brawl, I think both guys are super freaking tough and durable. So if they don't get laid out completely, they're not going to there won't be a stoppage. Obviously, that could happen. Both guys have power, but I don't see a submission happening. And, like I said, I think you'd have to put them both out cold to they're not the type that's going to turtle up. we've seen both guys get hurt and just, fight through it. So I don't know. I think Brener's live in a fight like this because he does have power, because, he could potentially use some grappling. If there's someone pushing the wrestling, you would think it would be him. Not that I would trust him to do that, but I mean, it's in his back pocket as a plan B potentially. I'd be more surprised to see Ribovics shooting takedowns, let alone landing them. But yeah, I mean, so because of that, it's probably a dog or pass, but not one that I'm probably gonna take. Probably just gonna be a pass for me. I'm probably just gonna sit back and enjoy this. It's gonna be a fun one. They're definitely, I don't really see this fight. I was about to say there's no way, but you never know that. But I'd be surprised if this wasn't an entertaining scrap. So I'll pick Ribovics. But plus 210, there's worse, underdogs to take, but there's also a couple I like more. So I'll probably just pass.
Yeah, I'm going to have to join my guy Ricky on this one. He says, not a fan of buying Ribovics at these big favorite prices. And listen, when I went on Clint's show earlier this week, I think I talked about the fact that I thought they were setting up these Argentinian guys, in winnable fights where they could go out there, potentially get a highlight reel knockout. They got two of the best male Argentinians on the roster fighting on the same card. But I just think that you got to be, realistic, right? And I think Kevin Vallejo is in a matchup with Danny Silva, who's a guy that I think, has skills, is a big enough guy, but I've seen that he's super hittable, right? I know that about him. And, I also know that his wrestling is okay, but he's not translating that to subs, at least not at the UFC level yet. So it gives me a little bit of pause on the Danny Silva side. Like, I could see why Vallejo is a favorite, right? On this fight, I think Ribovics is a good volume striker. I think that he's got devastating power. We saw him put Terrence McKinney on a highlight reel. Terrence is 7-4 in the UFC. He's not a slouch himself, but Ribovics was able to put him out, and it wasn't because he got tired, right? That's normally the rap on Terrence. Hey, he gets tired. He didn't get tired. He got his head sent to the third row. So Ribovics is clearly a dangerous knockout artist, and I basically wrote up this fight as, pretty straightforward to me. I think it's Ribovics by KO or split decision. And I think it's Elvis Brener by sub or split decision. That's where we diverge on this fight, man. Like, you look at Elvis Brener, I think that Oralby fight is kind of shockingly impressive. Like, if you just look at the physicality on paper, Elvis Brener doesn't look like he's going to be able to go with Oralby, a guy who easily submitted a welterweight in his UFC debut. And instead, man, he was rolling, scrambling, getting back up. It's the power of Oralby. It was the physicality on the feet that got to him more than anything. But one thing I've picked up about this Elvis Brener guy, man, is number one, he's 11-0 career to the submission. Like, nobody's ever tapped this guy. He's fought good guys, and you're just like, also, you look at the guys he's fighting, man, like, they're fucking freaks. They're big, strong, freak athletes, especially the recent ones. You look at Guram, he's a strong wrestler, man. He's a great athlete. You look at freaking Zubaira Tuhugov, dude, that guy's no slouch, 5-3-1 in the UFC. If he, was active and didn't have a boring style, he could have been something, right? So you look at where we're at with these guys here, like, Estevam Ribovics has some questions to answer in the wrestling and the grappling. Loic Radzhabov, he got kind of embarrassed by Trey Ogden. When they started wrestling and grappling in deeper situations, like, he flat backed him into the mount and got on top of him. And, Trey Ogden's a good fighter, but it's his physicality and his, physical dominance, like something that you're writing home about in every fight. Not really, right? I think he almost got in some sticky situations with Jordan Levitt. He got out wrestled there too. So you just look in. I don't want to ever be too reductive in my analysis, but like Ribovics, you mentioned, he gave up a ton of takedowns against one guy. Loic Radzhabov, bro, he's not a submission guy. He's a wrestler. Like, he has some subs maybe, but it's like, he's mostly I'll take you down, beat you up, throw some punches. He's not super Johnny Sophisticato with the jiu-jitsu. And Elvis Brener has real jiu-jitsu, man. He goes for arm bars. He goes for rear naked chokes. He's not afraid to mix it up, right? Then you see Joel Alvarez, maybe the biggest guy in the lightweight division, a guy who's sensational in all positions. He had him in a deep dart choke. He did not quit, did not give up, survived to the end of the round. You're like, this guy Elvis Brener plays for keeps, man. 21 professional fights, 27 years of age. He's a young man. And Joel Alvarez, he would be favored to beat Estevam Ribovics. I'm quite sure of that. Miktabek Oralby, with all due respect, he would be favored to beat Estevam Ribovics, and I'm quite sure of that. So when it comes down to it, it's like, I think Esteban, good fighter, solid guy, has clear knockout potential in this fight. He's got an opponent who's been knocked out before. But Brener has shown if he needs to dig deep in round 3 and find a way to grit out a win, he will do that. He did that against Guram Kutateladze. And prior to the UFC, he showed if you make a mistake on the ground, I'll make you pay for it fast. And it just seems to me like Brener has a path to wrestling to the top position in this fight, which in a lot of his fights has been very hard to do. He's averaging more than 1 takedown per 15 minutes. Estevam Ribovics does not have a very promising takedown defense rate for the reasons that we've already talked about. So, Terrence McKinney never got a chance to try and wrestle him, right? He got his head kicked off. Fight was over. I think Brener, same thing might happen, right? You go out there, you get kicked in the head, fight's over. That's tough. But I think if this guy has a chance to wrestle and grapple, Ribovics has impressive cardio. Ribovics has impressive pace and ability on the feet. But take him out of his element, is he the same guy? I think that's an open question. So I don't think Ribovics is a punk. I don't think he's a quitter, anything like that. I just think technically he might be outdone by a guy in Brener who has real skills on the mat. And, he could get you in one hold that closes the show. So for me, it's Brener by, wrestling to a close decision or a submission here, or it's Estevam Ribovics sprawl and brawl, knock this guy's head off, or do more work with your strikes and get the close decision there. But when you look at the pricing, it doesn't say, minus 125 Ribovics. It doesn't say minus 150 Ribovics. It says minus 2XX at a big price, big chalk. And for me, Brener's a guy that is proven as an underdog, multiple wins in the plus 500 price tag range, a guy that fights hard for your dollar, even in fights where he's fought against, a guy like Joel Alvarez. I feel like this guy, Brener, has shown he looked in shape for this fight week. He looks like he's ready to go. He looks well prepared. So both guys fit a lot of the right criteria for me as guys I want to back long term. They're young, they're aggressive, they're scrappers, they know how to finish fights, they know how to win close fights, they know how to go out there and fight hard for the full 15. All that's promising for both these guys. One of them's a big underdog. For me, it's a dog or pass situation. Anything you want to add, Cody?
No, I think you put it pretty well.
My man. Speaking of lightweight bangers, there's another one. It's Chris Duncan. It's Mateus Rebecki. Rebisti, not my favorite nickname, but I will say this, man. Rebecki, I said it'd be pretty cool if he got a sub right now when he was on Contender Series, and he went out there and subbed that guy with the shocking quickness. Shout out to Mateus Rebecki. Cashed us in on Contender Series. Contender right about to come back. On the other side, Chris Duncan is my sworn mortal enemy, brother. I had 3 units on Charlie Campbell. He was painting a masterpiece on the face of Chris Duncan, and then he ran onto an uppercut that sent him all the way to Hades, dude. Hats off to Chris Duncan. The guy just digs deep, man. He's got a grit, a will to win. He's got toughness. He's powerful. He's a big, strong, tough guy, man. But ultimately, if skills win fights, I think this is Mateus Rebecki's fight to lose. I'm going to kick it to you. How do you feel this fight goes down? Fun fight between 2 guys that are both 4-1 in the UFC, 2 guys that both train at ATT, 2 guys that both love their jiu-jitsu. What do you think about this one, my man?
Yeah, this is the one outside of Brener that I like. I haven't played, but it's an underdog that I think is live. I bet Duncan in his last 2 fights. And, obviously those panned out. But I do think this is a tougher matchup. Don't get me wrong. I think the Oki fight, I'll be honest. If they fight 10 times, do I think that is the outcome that happens? A majority of the times, probably not. I will say Vucinic, yes. I think he truly, I've said before that fight, I just don't think Vucinic's that good. And I think, that really the better fighter truly won that night. But, against Oki, he's green, he's young, he made a mistake. Is Rebecki going to repeat that kind of mistake? I don't think so. So would be kind of surprised to see a 3rd guillotine in a row. Maybe. I said the same thing about Walter hitting a 3rd heel hook, but
I bet the ends by sub plus 4XX. Boom!
Nice. That's a great, because I was thinking, nah, man. That's one of those times where you have to think like, hey, sometimes square is correct.
The hip to be square play of the day. I did think Kennedy could sub him in the later rounds as well. I will grant. I didn't think it was just Walter, but ship it in 45 seconds, and I will just salute you, sir.
Those in sub are sometimes sneaky because, sometimes you're barely even losing any. You'll lose like, it'll be like plus 650 and in sub will be like plus 400. It's like, man, crazier things happen in MMA all the time.
Dude, how about this? When I placed that Bet Online had Walter Walker by sub at plus 3xx. I'm like, wait, so you're going to give me both guys to win by sub at plus 4xx on a square book, whereas a sharp book like Bet Online has one of these guys to win by sub in the 3xx range. I was like, I'll live with the result. If I'm wrong, I'll live with the result.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a great bet. I don't think a submission is going to happen in this fight. As you know, at least that wouldn't be. I think this probably ends up being a scrap that goes 15. I mean, we have seen both guys get hurt, but so it's not like I could see a finish. A finish is definitely on the table, but it wouldn't be my first. I feel like this is going to be a classic training partners fight that goes 15. I'm not saying it's not going to be a good fight, because I think it is. It's a Chris Duncan fight, man. Like, and Rebeski too. Like, his fights are scraps as well. So, you know, I don't know if it's as clear cut. Oh, Matus early, Chris late, like that. Like most people are saying, and I get why. You know, I don't know if Rebeski's gas tank is quite as bad as everybody said. He's had a couple bad showings, but I don't think it's quite that bad. I just think his fights are chaotic, and he's probably gotten better over these. I'm sure he's working on that, pacing himself better. But this would have to be a dog or pass situation for me, just because I feel like Duncan. First of all, I mean, they size up. I mean, stylistically pretty well. Like I think their styles mesh pretty well. They're both pretty well rounded, but Chris Duncan, he's a pretty sizable amount bigger, decent amount bigger guy. They got the training experience with each other, which always throws, is a pretty big X factor. So if anything, I want to be on the plus money side. And I don't know. Part of me just wants to pass on this one, and I haven't bet it yet. But I was thinking, man, if that hits plus 200, it's going to be hard to not. One more in a row for Duncan. He's over exceeding most people's expectations when he first came to the UFC. But, I would not be shocked if he pulled it off again. I think he should be the underdog, but it's probably a bit wide. I would probably put Rebeski like minus 150, minus 160 maybe, something like that. So part of me does want to bet the dog, but I don't know if I'll get to it, man. What about you?
Yeah, when I look at this, I do think to myself, Chris Duncan has been running extremely hot in the UFC. If you ask me, like, again, could it be the guy's just making huge improvements at ATT? He's a big physical lightweight. He's got a strong will to win, and he's just getting better every time. That's very possible. And that's why I don't want to disparage Chris Duncan. I think the guy's earned your respect and then some, goes out there, fights hard every time. But when I just look at the fights for what they are, right? Yanal Ashmuz, he hurt his arm badly in that fight. Chris wasn't able to put him away. I didn't think Chris put on a particularly exemplary performance there. Did what he needed to do to win. His wrestling looked okay. It didn't look very good. It just looked like it was serviceable enough to get a guy with one arm back to the cage, kind of push him back there, hold on just enough, make him wrestle against the fence. And, Duncan showed he could fight for 15 minutes, but did he blow me away with that performance? To tell you the truth, he did not. When you look at the Balashioki fight, I thought he was kind of getting tuned up on the feet a little bit, and then he put Balashi in a tight guillotine and got the finish. He's getting taken down multiple times by Balashi, I think, which is probably not promising coming into this fight. When you look at Chris Duncan, I'm a guillotine guy. I'm a guy that loves the guillotine. I love the front headlock. I'm shooting for it all the time. And so, in some ways, like an opponent like Rebecca, you're like, yeah, this guy's going to shoot. He's going to give me opportunities. But it's just like the problem with these guys like Rebecca, number one, I don't think he's got much of a neck. I will say, like, I think Rebecca's an excellent grappler. He's a very short, stocky guy. Those guys just in general are very hard to submit. If you look at Mateusz Rebecca, he is 7-0 career to the submission. Very difficult to submit, right? I would just say, if you ask me who's the better grappler, Diego Ferreira or Chris Duncan, I would say Diego Ferreira, and it's not close. Again, with respect to Chris Duncan, if you ask me who's the better grappler, Miktabek Orobai or Chris Duncan, I would again say Miktabek Orobai, not close, and I would say that respectfully. So Could I be wrong about my assessment? Like, this is going to be this weekend a referendum on Mektabek Orobai, because like if he's not who I thought he was, then maybe I'm wrong about all my analysis. But like, I think that guy is like an absolute caveman with insane abilities, who's got real power, durability, and great wrestling, solid jiu-jitsu, understands what he's doing, right? I don't think he's like going to win the Mundials or something, but like for MMA, his process is super reliable. Take him down, suck the leg back out, get onto their back halfway, punch him in the face 50 times, make them decide if they still want to be there, and then go for the choke. And I think that's a really good game plan, right? And you look at that fight where Orobai, you know, in a part of the world probably where maybe he's getting a little bit of benefit of the doubt, right? I believe that was over in the UAE. He didn't get the nod, right? Rebecca was able to go out there and outwork him, bust him up on the face, do some damage, swell his eye really badly. And you saw that Rebecca was also able and willing to dig deep in that fight. Against Carlos Diego Ferreira, he hurt Diego Ferreira badly, and Diego Ferreira literally shut both of his eyes in the second round, and the guy couldn't see anymore. And so he was getting his ass whooped with two closed eyes, trying to fight, and they had to stop the fight. He didn't have it left anymore. But like, Rebecca, to me, is a guy that, you know, we've seen him lose via TKO, right? It's happened twice in his career. Those are both of the losses in his career. I've seen Chris Duncan be losing every exchange and then knock out Charlie Campbell. So to think that this guy is hopeless is foolish, right? The guy has power. The guy is opportunistic. But I always talk about, like, if they were to reline a fight, what would it be? You know, I placed a bet on Charlie Campbell, 3 units at -150. I didn't win that bet. If you ask me if I would do it again, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And like, if you just look back at that fight, like, I think that it was kind of a meme. And I also will say, Chris Duncan earned it, man. He got up from the canvas multiple times and then decked the guy. You just got to take your hat off to a guy at a certain point. He clearly is willing to bite down and find a way to win. But also, that's not like I'm a big favorite, right? Like, it's like I could definitely lose. You look at the Slava Borshev fight, I faded him there. That was another Contender Series fight. So Chris Duncan had to get multiple opportunities to get through the Contender Series because Slava folded him up and put him in a box, right? And when you look back at those fights, you just say to yourself, like, how did Slava's career turn out? Not very good, right? It's like, how about Manuel Torres? That fight has been memory hold by everybody, but guys, that it's a horrible look, right? Like, they go out there, they trade heavies on the feet, and then Manuel Torres, who's a basically first-round fighter, grabs a hold of the guy, like whips him every which way but loose, throws him backwards, takes his back and finishes him. And you're just like, if Manuel Torres and Mateusz Rebecki were meeting in a grappling match, like a jiu-jitsu contest or something, I think Rebecki would be -400, right? And it's like, that's not to be disrespectful of Manuel Torres and his opportunistic submissions. It's just like, process wins more often than not in grappling. And Mateusz Rebecki has a process where he gets on top of guys, passes their guard, and looks to finish them. And that's pretty effective, right? Guillotines, the reason a lot of guys don't want to prioritize them is because they can spend a career looking for them like Dustin Poirier and come up empty. And Chris Duncan has found a surplus of guillotines already in the UFC. Clearly, he's got good finishing mechanics and fundamentals, right? Putting Oki to sleep, impressive. But I bet Michael Aswell against Oki. Like, I'm not sold on Oki as like the next coming. He's an athletic guy. He's a guy that's got some pop in his hands. His technique is not that solid, right? So you just look at where Chris Duncan's getting his wins, and then where Mateusz Rebecki, yeah, some of his early wins in the UFC weren't great, but having success against CDF is great. Knocking out Loic Radzhabov is kind of shocking. The Orobai win, bro, that's earned in blood. Orobai's lost one fight in the UFC. He's had 4 opportunities. So I think that Mateusz Rebecki is a good fighter. And this may be biases because people say we look alike, my doppelganger, I got to root for the guy. But when you got a guy with no neck who really knows how to grapple, like against a guillotine merchant, I think Chris Duncan's kind of drawing dead to a knockout in this fight, honestly. And like, I think he's capable of winning by knockout. I think Mateusz Rebecki, it's the biggest flaw in his game. He's a little bit undersized for the division. He's willing to throw. He's willing to exchange. And he doesn't wear damage that well. You know, he's a Caucasian male, right? You ever seen a Caucasian get punched really hard in the face? Bro, their face starts turning red, swelling up, looking all sorts of disgusting, disfigured. That's what happens to Rebecki when he gets hit. For whatever reason, Chris Duncan takes it just slightly better. But ultimately, neither one of these guys wears damage great. I just think Rebecki is the kind of guy, I like his process. So my pick was Rebecki, sub decision here. I think he's going to get top position, and I think that's how he wins the fight. But if he just decides, like, let's bang it out on the feet, you're going to be loving plus 200 on Chris Duncan because they're going to trade wild blows, and somebody I think will fall over.
Yeah, as of now, though, it's just a pass for me, though.
Fair play, my man. And the one thing I'll note, I think I don't know what the exact odds are. Let me pull it up on the screen. I almost put in my article that I thought you could basically pick one of these guys to get the sub. And when you look at Rebecca's sub, it's plus 720 on Fanatics, but honestly, I would have hoped for a little bit more. I was hoping people would be sleeping on Rebecca's sub, but I think I took it like plus 4XX on Contender Series, and it looked free 99. So there's a small chance I'll end up getting there before all is said and done. But I think Rebecca does have the superior ground game. That brings us, my friend, to the main event of the evening. It is Tatsuro Taira, one of my favorites. I'm happy, thank you. And he's taking on Hyun Sung Park, Peace of Mind, on the other side, 3-0 in the UFC. But he beat the guy that I have described as having the worst chin in the history of the flyweight division. Again, with all due respect, Shannon Ross. He actually beat him with body shots, which is where you have to kind of clap for the guy, right? He took the guy with the worst chin and forced him to go down to body shots instead. But you just look at Shannon Ross, guys. He got one punch knocked out by Jesus Aguilar. I don't think that guy ever knocked anybody out before or since. Shannon Ross just don't take punches so good. He's a decent enough fighter in terms of his skills, but if you can't take a punch, very hard to fight professionally. Hyun Sung Park then beat Carlos Hernandez. That's a solid win. But other than that, guys, he's having road to UFC type of fights where he's getting dropped like fight over fight. Like it happened back-to-back fights on road to UFC. And I'm like, that's not super promising for me. Against a guy like Taira, who has been fighting quality competition, multiple wins in the UFC over guys with winning records in the promotion, beat Alex Perez, beat Chirez, a guy that's been solid, going out there having fun fights, beat Aguilar, a guy that went on to have some success himself in the UFC 3-2 in the promotion. So I think that Tatsuro Taira is a real deal Holyfield. I think that he is a guy that's going to win high-level fights in the UFC. Is the price super compelling? Not really. Short notice fight, short notice matchmaking, a little bit hard to feel like you're getting a huge edge there. But ultimately, I think Hyun Sung Park, a guy who's finished almost all of his fights, I don't trust his cardio over 25 minutes, right? Like, I think when you look at it, he took it on short notice. He's getting ready for a fight. I believe it was 15 minutes. And now it's like he's got to come in, fight a guy who just came off a 5-round fight where he gave an honest fight, if not a close scare, to Brandon Royval in that fight. And Brandon Royval, former title challenger, a guy who just fought Joshua Van, the number one contender, extremely close as well. So I think Tatsuro Taira proved he was a top 5 guy, but it wasn't his night against Brandon Royval. And I think if they did that fight again in 3 years, Tatsuro Taira probably gets the best of him. And I think if you look at this fight, Hyun Sung Park, I still believe he's got a future in the division. He's 29. Losing this fight will not be the end of his run. He'll be heard from again. But I think he took a really hard fight on short notice to try and elevate himself, to try and put himself in a position to win. I think he might go out there and have some success in the first round or two because he does have some power. He does have some confidence and some enthusiasm. But I also think, I wouldn't be surprised if he ran himself onto one of those big fists from Tatsuro Taira. He's got big hands. He's got power in those hands. He's got power and speed in those kicks, which are snappy to the body, especially those round kicks from Tatsuro Taira. So I think Taira's got good weapons on the feet. I think he's the superior ground player, and I think he's the better conditioned athlete. So for all those reasons, give me Tatsuro Taira to get the win in the main event. But unlike some of our opportunities in the past on the prelims against some guy you've never heard of, when Tatsuro Taira could be a 10-unit max play at minus 225, at minus 350 here against a good real fighter on the come up in Hyun Sung Park, I'm happy to pass this fight. I think Taira gets it done. The other problem is I don't really preference one method over another. Like I mentioned, Hyun Sung Park, he's been dropped multiple times. He could run onto one of them big fists of Taira, but Taira is a submission guy. He looks for the sub. He's very active looking for the sub. He could drop somebody, go for the sub. So I feel like Tatsuro Taira, if you watched his regional run prior to the UFC, he was a club and sub guy. He would drop guys with the left hand. He'd drop them with that big kick to the body. He would follow up with a snappy back take and put them away with the rear naked choke. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that in this fight as well. Cody, how do you feel about the main event of the evening, my man? Taira versus Park. Who gets the win? Is it Japan or South Korea?
Yeah. Man, when I first saw this matchup, I really thought, nice. I'm going to highlight what I think is going to be like last week, a dog card with the dog in the main event. But, man, honestly, you made a lot of the points that talked me off that ledge because, it is 5 rounds instead of 3 like he was planning. And then, like you said, You know, I don't like you touched a little bit on maybe it wasn't the greatest to switch up the matchup. Well, I don't think him and his team would disagree because apparently they weren't a huge fan of switching up the plans and taking this fight instead. And the UFC had to reach out three separate times to get them to do this. And it's not like the guy's scared or his team is scared. It's just I think they understand that this is a pretty tough matchup, let alone going 2 extra rounds on short notice. Like, he's undefeated, you know. You don't want to just throw that away. But I'm sure the UFC were like, hey, man, like, guess what? Like, the first time they were like, hey, bud, like, we might need you. Did you? No, we're good. Okay, no worries, you're good. And then they call back like, hey, man, we really might need you. Like, are you sure? No, we're good. Okay, no worries. Then they called back a third time. And we're like, hey, like, your fight, guess what, bud? Like, congrats. You have a new fight date. We'll see you there. Or else. And, you know, that's kind of how that tends to go from what, you know, people who have had that phone call have told me. I'm not saying in this particular case, you know, maybe, again, I'm sure that his team is just a business decision, you know, but that's just another extra. And then you hear him on the mic in the pre-fight, and I never put too much stake into pre-fight talk, but, you know, he is already kind of laying the groundwork for a potential loss. Like, oh, it's not ideal. And, you know, the weight cut is going to be tough on short notice. And wasn't exactly preparing for 25 minutes. You know, not exactly things you love to hear if you're trying to take an underdog shot. You know, and again, I don't put a ton of stock into these things, but they're just, you know, like they're just bullet point number 17 when I'm looking already on paper. Like, okay, I don't love this matchup, so I'm trying to find a reason. But yeah, I think Taira should cover, man. Like you said, I bet Royval in that fight, but it's not like, you know, it could have went. It was a close fight. Like I thought Royval won 3-2, but you know, it was a competitive fight.
The right guy won. The right guy won.
I walked away saying, like, okay, Taira's legit. Like, he's better than I thought. And it's not like I thought he was a bomb. I just thought, not sold. I'll take the underdog that I know is proven, 25-minute fight. But I walked away like, okay, I cashed my bet. But, you know, this guy Taira is legit. He's exceeded my expectations. He will be a problem. It's just, you know, kind of how I said could happen to Vallejos. Maybe it's a little too much too soon. But this ain't no Danny Silva, man. That was no Danny Silva. That was fucking title challenger, you know, in a different world, the champion. So, you know, definitely was impressed with that performance. And I think he probably does get Park out of there. Sub, TKO, I don't know. But I'm thinking like 3rd, 4th round. Leaning the sub, but honestly would not be shocked. We've seen Park get dropped by much less strikers. Taira striking's gotten a lot better because he's got the threat of the wrestling, especially if they get a little tired. I could definitely see it. So I think Taira gets it done. He's the rightful favorite, man. He should bounce back here with the dub. But, hey, you know, Park's no pushover. You know, I think he's solid. I just think that, you know, he'll take his first loss here. He'll bounce back. We'll see him. We'll see him get some good wins, but this ain't it. So give me Taira. No bet, though.
Yeah, the prices are really quite shite on the Taira side of things. I used to be getting the KO at 750, 800, and now you're looking at like 540. So just way down in terms of the prices. But the things I did want to leave you guys with on this matchup is Tatsuro Taira has been training at elevation. He's been training in Colorado. He's been training at pound for pound Muay Thai. He's been training with Chepe Mariscal and other UFC level fighters. So I think that Tatsuro Taira, I only expect improvements from this guy at his age, at his current skill level, with his willingness to be hungry for knowledge and information from other people in the game. I think we've seen huge leaps in his striking over the course of his UFC career. He was already pretty solid outside the UFC, but he was a little bit more limited to simple shots, the southpaw attack, the left hand, the open body kick. He's gotten a little bit better with the jab. He's gotten a little bit better with his wrestling entries as well. And I think I expect more improvements in that regard. Guys, the scoring from Tatsuro Taira has been exceptional. 96 plus fantasy points in 6 out of 6 UFC wins. That's extremely impressive. By the way, 76 points in a loss against Brener Royval because the guy really goes out there and gets to work in that 5-round fight. So you look at a guy, consistent producer, high watermark of 107 fantasy points, low of 76. That's a high ceiling, high floor as well for Tatsuro Taira. And on the other side, guys, Hyun Park has been a high scorer himself. I wanted to give you guys this nugget for people that stuck with us to the end. You know, the guy's been putting up scores when he goes out there. I basically think you need to pick a side in this main event. I get people that want to stack this, but I think if Hyun Park doesn't have the cardio, he could end up being a losing side of that stack. He might need to come out and do something special early in order to make himself known, especially from a DFS perspective. But on the other side, Tatsuro Taira, unless he gets, you know, clipped on the chin or something like that, the guy's basically shown you give him time to work, he's going to go out there and put points on the board, give you an honest chance. And at 9,200 salary, he's justified that in 6 out of 6 UFC wins. So if he can go out there and get another one on the board, I would not be surprised at all if he adds another 100-point total to that list as well. So that's the crack that we have for you guys today. Hope that you've enjoyed the show. I wanted to say special thanks to our guy, Cody MMA. If you haven't checked out Wager Wars, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go check it out. Fun concept, different way to break down the fights. Makes you kind of pigeonhole yourself to, okay, I got to make a pick for this fight. So you find your betting angles. You try and be strategic about it. It's a great way to experience the fights. Make sure that you check out Cody's channel. Everything that you need to find him is linked in the description box down below. And without further ado, anything you want to say, Cody, to the people, anything you want to get off your chest, anything you have to promote, the floor is yours, my friend.
Hey, nah, man. I just appreciate you having me. Appreciate the chat, coming through and hanging out with us. It was a long time coming to come over to your channel. Appreciate you shouting out Wager Wars and you being a part of the show. It's a tough format. It's a tough one to have a bet on every single fight, but I have a lot of fun with it. And 99% of the time, it's all good fun. Sometimes it gets a little crazy. If you know, you know. But yeah.
Sometimes it's a wager war, you know.
Yeah, no, it's really just war singular, depending on a certain guest. All love. But yeah, no, but good luck, everybody. Hope you guys make some money. And again, appreciate you hanging out with us. And definitely will come on again sometime. I'll definitely hit you up. And we'll get you back on Wager Wars too, because we have had people saying they want to get you back on. So we'll have to make that happen.
Absolutely, brother. And I have been what you would call absolute dog shit on Wager Wars so far, guys. I have been up Shit's Creek without a paddle. Haven't been on one of my heater weeks yet. So knock on wood, the next time I arrive, I'll be getting back everything I've worked for. You know, winning track bets, we could do that. Winning on Wager Wars, haven't been able to prove we could do that yet. So we got to go back to the trenches and get a dub. I will just say in my defense, been on short notice the last couple times. So we will get on. I'll be fully prepared. I'm going to go Rain Man style on you, ready to go with every fight. And my brother, it's always a pleasure. So thank you so much for stopping by, Cody. If you guys haven't checked out his work, guys, go follow him. X, YouTube, everything is down below. If you're looking for any more from me, that's also in the description box down below. I have all my DFS notes, all my predictions, all my articles, everything like that, all organized in one place. Try and make it easy, seamless for you guys if you're interested in my information. If not, God bless, good luck, and enjoy the fights anyway. Appreciate you all. And if you had fun, come back next week. We're having all the same fun again. Drop a like, hit subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everybody.